Yeah, that's what I meant about doing your magic.
Yeah, just right there. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, so I'm just gonna take attendance just so we can get that out of the way. And then I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed Kristen Dorsey. But first of all, okay, so attendance. So me, Lisa Ortiz, I'm here, I'm the chair. Gary Dean?
I'm here.
Gary is here. Dave Smith?
I'm here.
Dave is here. Martine is not here. Julie? Here. She is here. Anika? Here. Anika. Sasha? Not here. Gary Coffey? Also not here. And then Jim Miller, who told us that unfortunately he couldn't make it today. So, but thankfully we have a quorum because we do have some pieces we're going to want to do later. But before all of that, we're really excited to have Christian here to talk to us for a few minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Really, don't need to oversell it because I'm not going to say very much. It's just good to be with you all in person. I realize that outside of a few of you, I have not really seen the group since March, since we set it up. So it is really terrific to see you all at work and in the thick of what is a very robust training schedule. And I saw the note from Jim that signified that I guess tonight you crossed the halfway threshold to completing the hours of training, which is really a momentous occasion. So congratulations for all of that. And you know, sometimes when you are in the thick of going through something as robust as the training curriculum that has been designed for you, and sometimes lose sight of the big picture and the majesty and the importance of the forest. And so as I think about it as county board member, way back when we set it up this way, the goal was something far beyond just simply fulfilling a requirement for certification. We hope that we are establishing something that's pretty unique in the field of civilian oversight of law enforcement, and that is a body from the very beginning where the actual commissioners feel like they are fully capable of overseeing all elements of the agency that they are responsible for, but also that the agency itself views the civilian oversight body as a capable and credible oversight entity. That seems like it should be. I mean, I like my voice, but not like that. That seems like it should be a no-brainer, but sadly, as I've come to know the oversight agencies and entities throughout the United States, and certainly in this region, it's pretty rare that there's that degree of, on the one hand, the body itself has been given the tools to capably fulfill its mission, and then that the agency that they oversee understand and respect that they're fully capable to do the work. So we're doing something pretty important here in Arlington. It's going to be a model for certainly the Commonwealth of Virginia, but actually is going to really stand apart in the nation. You all are going to be among the most capably made aware commissioners doing this kind of work that I think has very few peers within the nation. So I just like to thank you. Thank you. You know, it's a lot of hours, more than halfway through. Keep the faith. You'll get to the finish line pretty soon. And I'm just so grateful again for you all committing to this work. It just means, I think, so much to have a great group of people doing some great stuff. And Lieutenant Martin and Captain Chamberlain and even Chief Penn, we'll give him a shout out as well. I thank you all for doing the curricular work and hopefully, in addition to imparting some sense of what goes into policing, hopefully you're providing opportunities for this great group of residents to provide you with feedback and giving you a chance to engage with laypersons, if you will, to sort of do a check on the work that you do and how it fits with the community. So that's all I got to say. I just want to thank you. Go forth, do great work, and I'll join in remotely as soon as I leave. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. We really appreciate that. And I mean, I have to say again that it really speaks to all the advanced work that was done in putting together the ordinance and the commitment of Arlington County Police Department. I mean, if we are among the most well-trained and capable, there were a lot of people who got us here. So I have to thank you and the Arlington County Board and the Arlington Police Department, everybody who put in all that upfront work. So
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you very much.
Great, thank you all. Have a great meeting.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So with that, and speaking of the great Arlington County Police Department, I will turn it over to Captain Chamberlain's to kick off for our next tranche of training.
All right, so this part, we kind of rearranged the calendar just a little bit, but this is going to be on report writing and what we teach our staff and what you will see in terms of report writing. And it also hits on some of our technology systems, being our law enforcement records management system, NCIC, and VESA, and what all those things mean, because you'll see those terminologies if you're not familiar with it during the course of all the work that you're going to be doing as well, okay? And I don't want to steal Matt's thunder here. Okay, there you go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Matt Martin. I'm a lieutenant in the Office of Professional Responsibility. I actually work for Captain Chamberlain. So first of all, let me just say, at any point during this, if you have any questions, please stop and ask. I have time set up at the end to answer questions, but I want this to be a conversation. I hope you all agree that that's probably the best way to do this, rather than me just sit here and talk at you for 20 or 30 minutes. Just to let you know, I grew up in Arlington. We moved here when I was 8, so I've been here pretty much my whole life. I left for about 10 years for college and work, and then came back in early 2002, right after 9/11. And I started working for the police department. My first job was actually as a civilian. I was the public information officer. So I handled all the media inquiries, thank God, in the time before social media, because I don't know if I could do it now. But I did that for 4 years, and I realized that it seemed like it was a lot more fun to be out in a patrol car than to sit at a desk and issue press releases. So after that, in 2006, I went to the academy, and I've been a police officer ever since. The bulk of my time with the department has been in patrol. 12 of my 16 years have been in patrol. I've worked all 3 shifts, so days, evenings, and mids. I was a field training officer for 3 years, which is probably one of the most rewarding experiences I had, getting to train new officers and make sure they knew how to do the job right and safely. I was a supervisor on the evening shift when I first got promoted. And then really, other than patrol, the only other 2 things I've done are the Office of Professional Responsibility, which I've been doing for about a year. And then I helped build and then run our current records management system. So that was a massive project where we switched from one older legacy system where we were still writing reports by hand and switched to a completely computerized digital system. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So that's just a quick background on me and my time with the department. So here's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about NCIC and VESA. I'm going to explain what those terms mean and how we use them. And then we're going to talk about a couple of the computer systems that we use. So Brazos e-citation is how we write our tickets now. So up until maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, we were still handwriting tickets. If you got pulled over and got a traffic ticket, that's all being done digitally now. We're going to talk about the law enforcement records management system, which is the system I referenced earlier that I helped build and run. And then I'm going to talk to you about police reports. So I've been teaching report writing to all new officers for about the last 6 or 7 years. So every new recruit class that comes in, they get probably a total of about 12 or 15 hours with me over several sessions where I teach them how to write the narrative portion of the report, what the department wants, how to structure it, a little bit of spelling and grammar, but mostly content and what goes in the report and what doesn't go in the report.
Will we get a copy of the slides or no?
We can give you.
Yep.
There's nothing in here that's.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is NCIC and VESA. So NCIC is a computerized index of criminal justice information. It's the federal system. So this is the system that interfaces with all the state level systems, and when Virginia or Oregon or DC or whoever puts information into their system, that gets uploaded to NCIC. And that way, if we pull someone over here who's wanted in Kentucky, we'll know that because that information is entered in and accessible through NCIC. It's got information on wanted persons, stolen property, missing people. It's got criminal history information, so not just if you're wanted right now, but if you've ever been arrested and what the outcome of that was. All of that is contained within NCIC. Now, that's not everything. It has a lot of other information in it too, but these are the primary pieces of information that we interact with and that we're looking for when we access these systems. I think it's important to note that NCIC and all the subordinate systems, certainly Virginia's system, has very strict validation rules. And you can imagine why this is needed, right? Because if we're going to read something on a screen and then take away somebody's freedom, take the rest of them and go to jail, that information can't be mostly correct, right? Or it can't be valid 2 years ago, but not today. That stuff has got to be accurate. And I'm telling you, when you work around this system, especially not just as a user of the information, but I worked in dispatch for a while, and you see what it takes to get information entered and how many checks it goes through. It is significant how much quality control is done on this information. Agencies can lose their access to these systems very easily if they are found to be making these errors, because you can imagine the trust in the system would just plummet if there was people who were routinely being arrested, or if property was being seized because we thought it was stolen, but it really wasn't. So this information is, of all, I've worked with a lot of information systems, the validity of the information in this system is about the highest that I've ever run into.
Can you just give us a short, I don't want to get long here, but just a short example? I'll use an example on one of my ride-alongs. There was, they ran a car that had been spotted on a carjack in Maryland, and so at midnight they were waiting for him to a bowling alley. And so two of the guys ran, they caught two, and like, I'll use an example, like one was a black male in jeans, and I was really impressed watching the validation of that, where they had the camera and they were like, hey, did he match this? It's like, no. And I'm sitting there going, wow, it's, could have been a white male for all I know, but he had jeans on. But I was impressed. And so just give me an example of this. So you got a user who enters the data. So can you just give me just a short example of the
Sure.
validation?
So let's say I obtain a warrant for somebody, right? I develop probable cause that, and we're going to talk about this, it's a made-up person that we use in training. Leroy String Bean, right? I get a probable cause that Leroy String Bean has committed a robbery. So I go to the magistrate and I swear out a warrant, and I'm issued a warrant. Leroy String Bean is now wanted, right? We use that term all the time, but what does that really mean in these systems? What that means is I then take that warrant and I go and I fill out a form with all the information on the warrant, all the information I may have about him. If there's anything, if he's known to carry guns or known to fight the police or whatever, those are called cautions. Put all of that in there, and it then goes up to our dispatch center. And our dispatch center has people whose sole job is to enter and remove information from VSIN and NCIC. So I fill that form out, they review it before I leave and make sure that it looks right to them. There's then a second check that's done on that information. A second person looks at that form. They also have a copy of the warrant, and they are meticulous about it. I mean, everything has to match. Middle name, if the middle name's on the warrant, the middle name has to be on the form. If you've run their criminal history and they're also listed with their middle name as an initial, that has to go on the form too. That's how specific and precise the information has to be. Once that second check is done, then they actually do the entry. They actually enter it into VSIN, which then goes up to NCIC, so everybody sees it. Now let's say that person is stopped in Maryland, right? Leroy String Bean is now stopped in Maryland. It's not Maryland's warrant, right? It could even be another Virginia jurisdiction. But if they're stopped by anybody other than us, they can detain that person, they could hold on to him, but they can't actually arrest him and take him to jail until they have confirmed that that warrant is in our system and is still valid. That means they literally, well, they don't call, they send an administrative message over, and somebody in Arlington has to put their hands on that warrant and then reply with a confirmation, yes, that warrant is still valid and we still have it in our records, it's still executable. And there are time limits for how that has to happen. If that warrant isn't confirmed, then that person is let go. If that information is confirmed, then they're arrested, and if it's another state, they go through the extradition process. If it's in Virginia, depending on how close they are, we may go pick them up right away. But that's just one example of how information gets put in and how, even once it's in there, it has to be confirmed before we can ultimately act on it and make sure it's valid.
Thank you.
Sure. So VSIN is just Virginia's Criminal Justice Information Network, and that interfaces with NCIC. It's one of more than 50. There's one for each state, but then I believe like certain territories have their own. So Virginia's is called VSIN. In addition to all the stuff that you find in NCIC, VSIN is also our link to the DMV. So if you think about it, when we pull someone over and we run them to make sure that their license is valid, that their car is properly registered, this is done through VSIN by checking the DMV. Obviously, we're also checking if the car is wanted. That all happens with just one entry. So we go in and we put the license plate in. It's checking all these databases in a matter of seconds. But in addition to the criminal information, it's also just kind of the administrative information of, is the car registered? Is the driver licensed? What's their point balance? You know, if they've gotten tickets. Does everybody know how Virginia's point balance works, just from a driver standpoint? Does everybody?
No.
So in Virginia, plus points are good and negative points are bad. So if you have points in Virginia, that's actually a good thing, right? You get them by going a year without getting a traffic conviction. So every year you go, you earn a point, or you can earn them by taking a traffic education class. But you max out at 5 positive points. So you might hear the term, if you're doing a ride along, oh, he's a +5 driver, she's a +5 driver. That means they're the best, you know, record you can have. And then typical, like a garden variety speeding ticket or running a stop sign is 3 demerit points. These are issued by the DMV, not by us or the courts, but if you're convicted of it, you get 3. So if you were at +5, you go to +2. If you get another one, now you're at -1. If you get a certain number of points, you can actually get your license suspended. I haven't told my boss this yet, but I almost pulled a car over. I'm not supposed to pull cars over because I'm not in patrol anymore, but it's a hard habit. But this car was coming in this morning just driving wildly in the rain, and I really, really wanted to pull it over, but I let it go. And I got in and I couldn't help myself, so I ran the tag. And he was a -13
Oh my God.
driver who had taken 3 driver improvement courses, and he was 19 or 20 years old.
Oh,
So, you know, what's that?
It's a -28. 5 points for every driver improvement course.
Right, yes, exactly. He had earned 5 points back for taking 3 driver improvement courses.
So you have to wait 3 years to get, not that it was me, but,
And all of our conversations today are hypothetical. Stipulate that right now. We're all asking for friends, right?
yes, that's a friend. If you got a speeding ticket, you have to wait 3 years?
Yes, just to earn them back by the passage of time.
Okay.
You would lose 3 points, depending on what you started at, but you would lose 3 points. Every year you go without getting another ticket, you earn 1 back. So that would wipe out the 3 that you got. You'd be back where you started.
Gotcha.
And you can pay the DMV like $7 and they'll tell you how many points you have.
Yeah,
We had to do it for work.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I think you can actually pull it down online. You might be able to
Yeah,
pull
they
it
can
down.
do it now. Yeah. I'll tell her.
Yeah.
Can that information be used in the officer's calculus? You know, some situation going on, is that part of his
Yeah.
calculus? Something totally unrelated to driving?
Oh. Probably not. I can't imagine taking it into account.
No, okay.
Driving, but I will tell you that the kind of quandary I've always thought about is if you give a break to a +5 driver, and they're always a +5 driver, they're always getting a break, at what point does anybody ever start to earn points? So I mean, I think, you know, +5 drivers deserve, if it's a very minor infraction or you're on the fence about whether they deserve a ticket or not, that could be the piece of information that pushes you over to maybe a verbal warning, but I can't imagine taking into account anything other than driving context.
Does that, one other question, do those points carry over through NCIC to others? Like,
No, you might
get pulled
see
over in another
them.
state, they don't see our DMV.
I've never seen a Virginia return in another state. Maryland doesn't put points on. I think they used to. I have a vague memory that Maryland might have done it at one point, but no, I just don't know.
Okay.
Depends on.
Since they're not interoperable like policies, it would be hard to use another state's data.
Yeah, but Maryland, when you get a Maryland license back, you get a lot of text information at the bottom that they've like, it's almost like their driving record, and not all states do that.
Right, like if you get pulled over in another state, I wonder if when they run you, they see your Virginia points.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they do.
Okay.
So some terms you might hear either when you're doing a ride along, if you ever are watching body cam footage associated with NCIC VEASAN, are running a person or running a vehicle. That just means putting their information in and seeing what you get back. That's the same as a person or vehicle check. Again, it just means checking them to see if they're stolen, if the car's stolen, or if the person's wanted, or what their DMV status is. Wanted check is the same thing. If you hear an officer say, yeah, I've run them and he's clear, that means they're not wanted. Doesn't really tell you about point bounce or anything like that, but it generally means they're not wanted and their license is valid if it's a driving related infraction. A 1099 is an old term from when we used 10 codes. So we actually went from 10 codes on the radio to plain language when I was in field training. So it's been 15 years that we've been using plain language, but some 10 codes kind of stick around. And 1099 just means somebody's wanted. So an officer who's been around might use that because it's a way to let other officers know the person's wanted without saying right in front of them, this guy's wanted. You can imagine the reaction that might come when that was said out loud. And then a return is just information you get back. So, I got his return back and he's clear. So this is an example. First of all the information I'm going to show you is all fake information. This is a test record that we're allowed to run for testing. So you're not seeing any real information about any real person. But this is just an example of what what returns back when you run someone. So this is a test record for Leroy Bubba String Bean. That is Virginia. That is the Virginia State Police's name they picked for the fake person. He's also, well, he's 5'9" here, but in his other returns he's 6'9", 150. So I think they've intentionally done that to not match any real person. But anyway, so this is a wanted return. So this person is wanted or would be wanted if this was real, and there's a caution on him. So as you work your way down, the CMC, those are the cautions. So there's a caution that he's a sex offender. That doesn't mean he's wanted for a sex offense. It's just warning you that this person is a sex offender. It's telling you that there is full extradition. That's very important because if somebody is wanted by Louisiana, but they will not extradite him, then we cannot arrest him. We would not arrest that person. Because obviously if they're not going to come get him and execute the warrant, what good does it do for us to arrest him? So that tells you right away that full extradition means we'll come and get them anywhere in the United States. A lot of limits you'll see are surrounding states. So does anybody know the acronym for surrounding states for Virginia? No? Peanut butter with ketchup. You know it?
I'm supposed to.
Peanut butter with ketchup tastes nasty, dude. No, peanut butter? Not peanut butter. Wait a second, I messed it up already. It's, anyway, it's West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Maryland, and DC. I missed one? That's right. What is the first one then?
Pennsylvania.
We don't touch Pennsylvania. Anyway, I forgot the first part. But anyway, there's an acronym. My fourth grader taught me that a few years ago. So anyway, we will extradite from surrounding states. In some cases, we'll just extradite from the DMV, so from District in Maryland. We'll generally go pick up anybody anywhere in Virginia if they're wanted on an Arlington warrant, which is funny because we might have to drive 6 or 7 hours to pick somebody up in the southwestern tail of Virginia, but we might not go 3 hours to get somebody from Pennsylvania. So these are all set generally by the level of crime. So the more serious crimes, obviously, further up, we're willing to go to pick them up.
Can I ask a general records question?
Sure.
To this, and the only reason I'm asking is because I've watched what the Air Force is doing right now, just getting realigned to, sex. So whether it's this record, any other records, where is the, I guess where's the county? Because you guys follow our county rules, right? As far as what people want to be called. I don't know, Air Force has changed their whole thing where they're allowing
gender?
other things.
You mean
Yes, for
gender,
gender.
gender.
Yes.
So, so we're limited by what the FBI sets out, and then VEASAN follows them. So I'm not talking about how we interact with people and how we.
No, I'm just talking about records.
But you're talking about these values here. These are set. We have to, when it's things like race, ethnicity, sex, or gender. The term that the FBI uses is sex. Those are set values. States can't opt to pick other ones. They can't opt to, have
So
20.
you're talking for the NCIC?
Correct. So for NCIC and VSIN entries, those are set values. It's essentially a drop-down list,
Okay.
and we cannot vary from that.
Okay. What about Virginia's?
It matches.
It matches FBI.
You have to match with FBI because you're feeding into their system.
Okay.
So if Virginia had, whatever we're talking about, if Virginia had 15 options, but the FBI only had 7, it just wouldn't work because where would those other 8 go?
But the feds have adapted.
Right, they have
Okay.
decided what these are. And
Okay.
like I always say when I teach recruits, in no way does it accurately describe the mosaic of
Sure.
human experience, but that they have to pick some values and
Okay.
they picked them and
All right,
we're obligated to follow those.
perfect.
So this is just a return of a driver's license. So this is not a criminal return. This is, there's 6-9. This is the DMV return. So if you were to be stopped by the police and you have a Virginia driver's license and an officer was to run your information, your return would look something like this, hopefully not revoked DUI related and disqualified as a driver. But because it's a test record, they've thrown everything in here. So it tells you that he has had 2 previous DUIs, that he's had a previous commercial motor vehicle violation, that his license status is revoked, that he's disqualified to be a commercial driver. So this would be a really, really terrible driver. And he would get lots of tickets if he did. Any questions about VSIN and NCIC that we didn't cover? All right, so Brazos e-citation, that's our system for issuing traffic and criminal summonses. In addition, there's some other functions in e-citation. We do, anytime we impound a vehicle, what we used to call our tow form. If you're involved in an accident, by law, you have to give certain information to the other driver and they have to give information to you. Doesn't matter who's at fault. That is called a driver information exchange. That's handled through this. And we also issue false alarm notices. So no, have they had any presentation about that yet? So Arlington actually has a false alarm ordinance to try to reduce the number of false alarms. Something like, I think it was about 20 or 25 years ago, there were just a ton of these automated alarms, right? So at a business, it could be at a residence too, but it goes off, it goes to whatever company is running it, Wells Fargo, whoever, and then they call the police and send us out there, and it would be just an unsecured door or a malfunctioning alarm, and we would go to the same place over and over and over again. So the county actually passed a false alarm notice, and if you're gonna have an alarm that has an automated call to the police, you have to register it with the county, and then if you have a certain number of false alarms, there you get a series of increasing fines, and then I think after the 6th or 7th one, our response to your alarm is suspended. We don't go out anymore. So to know that, right, when the officer goes out and determines that it is a false alarm, they have to fill out a form so that it can be recorded that they have had a false alarm. That's done through the same system. And this system runs on department issued cell phones. So everybody, when they're hired, gets a cell phone and it has this app on it. And then all of our patrol cars have printers in them. They print out a receipt, looks like a CVS receipt. Everybody jokes about it. It's a long, thin, narrow ticket or information exchange form or alarm notice. And when you connect the phone, you put in all the information. You actually take your phone to the driver. They sign it with their finger. And then you hit print and it comes out. You give them their copy. And then the information is uploaded into our systems automatically. And the system that it's uploaded into is LERMS. So again, this stands for Law Enforcement Records Management System. This system was built out in 2016. Our system before that was about 30 years old. It was literally a data entry, very basic. We were still writing our reports by hand. Actually, when I started, we were writing everything by hand, including the narrative. We finally got some PDF forms that we could at least type them out, but we were still printing them out. And then clerks and records would sit there and do data entry. They would literally get our report, put it on a stand, and do everything from that, manually enter it into the system. So now we have a report. There's a function that does the report writing, and then all that information with some human effort is just brought right into the system. So there's no manual entry anymore. So it's a comprehensive digital records and report writing system, and just about all the data that we collect as officers out on the street or as detectives is put in here. So cars that we've towed, tickets that we've issued, parking tickets we've written, reports that we write, all of that is put into this system. And it's great because it's, you know, we can kind of tell from one click how we've been involved with a person or a vehicle or a piece of property. And we also have our personnel and training records in the system, so we can see, you know, where everybody has someone moves through their career, and as they get training, that's all recorded, and we can see it all in one place. So like I just mentioned, one of the key things about this from a law enforcement standpoint is the relationships that are created between people and vehicles, things that we just wouldn't know if we didn't record them and make them available for search. And we can search people, property, vehicles, and see how the departments interacted with them. And access to various parts of the system are determined by permission. So an officer has a certain set of permissions that enables them to do certain things. Detectives, you know, get more permission so that they can manage their cases. Supervisors get additional permissions, and all of that, you know, controls who can see what and who can add and delete information to the system. And we share the system with the sheriff's office, and very recently, it's still actually being implemented with the fire marshals. So the fire marshals, before using LERMs, really didn't have a system. They would write their reports. They had forms and everything, but their information, their data was not computerized. It wasn't being collected, and it certainly wasn't being cross-referenced with police information. And since fire marshals are law enforcement officers, you know, that could be really helpful. Something that they record or know about could be super helpful to us in an investigation. So it's great now that they're going to be using the system, and all that data will be combined. So this is just an example. If you were to run a person, this again is Leroy Stringbean. So again, nothing here is real, but if you were to run him, this is what you would see. So you get some basic information on the first page: name, most recent address, date of birth, physical descriptors, all of that is right here. And then as you start to drill down, you get to see more information. So for example, if you click the activity button, this is everything Leroy Stringbean has ever been involved with the Arlington County Police Department. All the tickets he's received, the warrants if he's been wanted by us. When he's been listed in a case, you can see he's been listed as a suspect. He was a victim as a case in another instance. So whether he was a victim or a witness, whatever, we can see all of that at one glance. And then just by picking the item and double clicking on it, we go right to that item and can read the details about it if needed. We also have what are called alerts on people. So these are cautions or information we might need to know quickly. So if an officer were to run this person in the field, those would come up and they could see the information right away. Or if they were running them on the, I don't know why I did this for a radio, running them on like this on a radio, the dispatcher would see this information and be able to relate it. So it's things like, you know, if this person is confirmed to be in a gang or has fought as a known police fighter, or we have another category for police impersonators, if someone's known to impersonate the police, if somebody has mental health issues that cause them to maybe have more difficult interactions with the police, we can put that in here so the officers have that information and can act appropriately when they receive it. You can do the same thing with vehicles. So this is just a vehicle. In this example, this vehicle is owned by Leroy Stringbean, which we of course would know by running the vehicle in the DMV. But the cool thing about using LERMs is we can also put other people, we can also associate other people with the vehicle. So in this example, here's another fake person that we designated as being a passenger in a vehicle. So now we have that connection which we never would have known before, because of course passengers in vehicles are not recorded in the DMV. But now we know that at least on one date, that Edna Krabappel was a passenger in this vehicle, which is owned by Leroy Stringbean, and those connections can just pay off dividends in investigations down the road. All right, so let's talk a little bit about police reports. Any questions about LERMs? Yeah.
Yeah, do you guys have like dashboards from LERMs or like data visualization? That sounds like that's where most of your raw data comes from. So as it pertains to like annual record keeping and report aggregation, is that derived from LERMs?
Yeah, everything comes out of there. LERMs has some pretty decent but basic analytical tools to like build custom reports, and pretty much any field that exists in LERMs, you can query it in one way or another. But if you're talking about like a live database that's kind of constantly being updated and showing like the picture today of whatever, that is not native in the system from this company.
But it's exported.
It's exported, yes, and our IT group has what they call a data warehouse, which pulls our data out of all of these systems and aggregates them, and then you can have query tools into that system that can show you that information.
Thanks.
Yeah, one other question, is there a Virginia state law that, I thought I saw something about this, and I can't remember if I'm correct, but I thought there might be a law that says you need to record the race of the person who stopped.
Yes.
Yeah, and so
That's
that's.
passed a couple of years ago.
Okay, and
It's
that's in there somewhere, like,
2020, there's the Community Policing Act, is the act that you're referring to. Whenever we come in contact with someone, there's certain things that you have to record, which are things that we record already in terms of what happens in a summons, which is race, sex, all that. But this requirement pushed for that you have to record. So warnings, while they may be verbal, you still have to record that interaction because that information is still now noted and calculated in that view. Virginia has a dashboard of that information. However, the requirement is that they push quarterly. So it's only 4 times a year that information gets uploaded into that system of that particular data from a stop.
so, and does the state publish that?
Yeah,
Yes.
the state publishes it. It's on a actual dashboard, as you
Okay,
spoke to. You can choose your locality, and from there, they'll create the report for you.
Okay.
And we do have the link on our site too for it to send you to that site.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so officers use part of LERMS, another tool called Mobile, which is the software that's designed to be used in the field. They use that to write their reports and also to search for people, property, and vehicles in NCIC and VSA. And we have really 4 main report types, 3 main report types, and then a report that's just not frequently used. And these are a case report, a case supplement, and an arrest report. And up here it describes what each one of those do. If you just talk about a police report, the term that we use for that is a case report. So if a crime occurs, somebody's arrested, an officer's going to go out, and the result of that will be writing a case report. If they learn new information later about it, they want to add information, they would write what's called a case supplement. Or if another officer assists them and needs to add information to the case, they would do that through a supplement. And then an arrest report documents anytime someone's arrested. So when the officer is going to write a report, the very basic overview of the workflow is they finish up the call, they get in front of their computer. It can be the MDT, which is what you've seen if you've done your ride-alongs that's in the car. They can do it from any computer at the station, but they'll open up Mobile and they'll start writing their report. When they're done with that, they'll submit it in the system. It goes into the supervisor's queue, and the supervisors are just constantly monitoring that, looking for reports to come in. And as they do, they review it. If there's any issues with it, they can send it back to the officer, or they can make the correction themselves. And then once it's approved by a supervisor, it goes into a process called the merge, which is the process of moving an action from the Mobile system into LERMS. And there's some quality control checking that's done there. And once it's in the system, then it's finalized and it's data that can be used, as we've already talked about.
What's the threshold for writing a report?
Somebody pay you to ask me that? It's,
Right.
I mean, we have a highly educated police force, an amazingly highly educated police force. But we also have a very broad range of writing abilities. So when I do the training that I do, I only have so much time with them. And we try, like I said earlier, we try to focus on content. You know, I'd say as long as they're meeting most spelling and grammar rules and it's organized, is this what you're asking?
No, but
I'm sorry.
Let's say, you know, you're driving along and you see.
Oh, what triggers you to write a
Exactly.
report? I'm sorry, I thought you meant the threshold for the quality.
No.
You can tell where my brain is.
Right.
Oh, so there's some things that require a report. I mean, if you arrest somebody, if a serious crime has occurred, by state law, there's certain times we have to write a report. A missing juvenile, we're required to write a report. A domestic battery, we're required to write a report. So there's some things that are automate, not automated, but some things that are mandated by the state. But, you know, some of it is a judgment call. I mean, if none of those things happen, there may be times where one officer may say, I'm going to write a report, and an officer may not, and they can both be right. It really depends.
Okay. And they do that from an app on a phone, or do they have to get on a laptop?
It's on a computer.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really hard. You know, some places do that, but it's really hard. The way you'll see how we write narratives. I'm going to show you an example report here. And the way we write narratives, that would be nearly impossible.
Okay.
And then the earlier thing I mentioned about the quality would
Yeah.
probably go down. So a case report consists of data fields, and those feed into all those fields and LERMs that we can query with our reports. And then, of course, a narrative that tells the story, and that is helpful, you know, in court or to further the investigation. Generally, a case supplement, that's the add-on, only contains the narrative, but we can also use that to add data. So if a new witness comes to light or something like that, we would put that person in a case supplement in the data fields so they could be added into the database. And then an arrest report consists of data fields only. There's no narrative. So only a case report, and any supplements to that report would actually have some, you know, narrative in it that you could read. So this kind of relates to your question, but why do we write reports? So I'm going to ask you guys to answer this question. What do you think? I just talked about some, but what do you think? Not the instances that cause us to write reports, but what's the value of writing reports?
You might track people over time and see if they're, you know, continuous certain type of problem or a worsening problem or associated with another person who's been doing the same thing.
Right. So to track for investigative purposes, to track people and crimes.
Creates a record.
Right.
Like one of the beginning points at which you like start having a physical case record or a physical record if it becomes like a case in criminal court or
right.
of that nature.
Well, and it is data that then you can analyze.
Mm-hmm. And if someone gets arrested, what's the next step in the legal process after they get arrested?
So to show it to a judge.
For court, right? And so, you know, our officers work 5-10-hour days just in a row. And if they're making a lot of arrests, it's hard to keep track of all that. So a lot of this too is just to help the officers remember when they go to court what happened. If you're a midnight officer or you work a lot of DUI, extra patrols, and you make a lot of DUI arrests, I can trust me, they all start to blend together because the field sobriety tests you're giving are the same for everybody, and the indicators of intoxication you get might be someone may have stepped left offline, someone else may have stepped right, but they're all in the same ballpark. It can be really hard to keep that stuff separate. So writing it down and then being able to refer to it, that's a big reason why we write reports. Oh.
I testified in a murder case suppression hearing last week from when I was a detective in 1998. So I was very happy to have my report.
This is why we teach officers to write thorough, clear, well-organized, reports that have all the relevant information in it. Because if you leave something out and then you don't remember it, I mean, it's great now that we have body cams, and that's a big, you can't just show up for court and play your body cam. You still have to testify. And so it's very important.
So on a typical report, on a shift, officer submits it, and then is it the shift supervisor? Who's the guy in the cab, the battle cab, whatever you call it?
So each squad has 4 supervisors, a
Okay.
lieutenant who's running the whole squad, and then
Yeah.
3 sergeants. Generally, it's the sergeants who are reading and reviewing reports.
Okay, so will there be one review by one of them? For every one that's submitted, there'll be
Yes.
at least one review?
Oh, one and only one.
One and only review, okay.
Unless, yes.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Okay.
Some strange circumstances. So, I mean, we talked about all of these for the most part. I think the only 2 we really didn't hit were the last 2. So to guard against liability, what I mean by that is certainly not to cover up if you've done something wrong, but, if you write what happened and then someone comes along and accuses you of doing something bad, I mean, again, the body camera is great, but, if you've documented that you got him booked and all that, and he wasn't injured or whatever, that you went directly from the place where you arrested him directly to booking, and then it's harder for somebody to have to allege that you did something like diverted off your route or something like that. If you've documented it, and all that can be backed up by, body cam, in-car camera, or mileage on your car. There's a number of ways to do that.
So related to our role with receiving complaints, can you just give us a sense for kind of where we are? I mean, how often does that happen? I mean, I really think that's really important.
Guarding against liability?
Yeah, I mean, how often well, not so much liability, but how many times has this record been used for your investigations to go, that didn't happen? Or our internal investigation used the data to support all the other things you put together to say, I mean, does this help you quite a bit?
Oh, it helps tremendously. Also, to go along and, this is Matt here, but that's Matt Owens back there. What he's gonna be speaking to is the digital evidence management system. And in terms of our investigations, we check both the report writing and the digital evidence management, which is the body worn camera, in-car camera, or maybe an interview room, those systems and those reports to look prior to us doing anything else to know, is there something there valid or is it missing something? Say it's a video that doesn't have audio to it. And so, but the complaint is reference to something that was said, that kind of gives you some insight to, or lack of insight, which is causing for those additional interviews. So yeah, this is critical to those types of instances in particular.
All right, then to assist Arlington residents and visitors, I mean, you can, if your property is damaged as a result of a crime and we document it, it can help you with an insurance claim or something like that. So these are all the reasons why we write reports. So, and as a result of that, they have a large target audience. Officers are writing for a number of different people, and they have to keep that in mind. And if they're doing their job, they will anticipate questions from these folks and answer those questions in the report. When part of my training, I always teach the officers is your job is to become an expert on what happened, right? It doesn't matter how minor or dramatic it may be. Your job is to become an expert in that incident. And if I have a question, I should be able to ask you it and get an answer. And I really preferably would not even have to ask you a question. It should all be answered in that narrative. So there we go. And it's important to note too that a narrative doesn't contain everything an officer knows about an incident, right? There's a lot of information the officer collects that just isn't relevant to a criminal case. And so, that you may see something on a body worn camera that isn't in the report, and that is perfectly normal as long as it's not relevant. And so officers, part of their training is just the reps of going to these calls and watching more experienced officers and learning what is relevant and what isn't relevant, what needs to be in a report and what doesn't need to be in a report. So things that do need to be in a report are things like legally required actions, right? Like if we need to read someone their Miranda rights before we ask them questions in custody, you need to write that in your report. It's not good enough to just say, well, I always do it, or I know it'll be on my body camera. You have to write in your report that you did it, and you have to write in your report what you said, and did the person say they understood it, because these are all vital questions about whether their testimony or their statements would be admitted or not. So there's certain things that clearly have to be, and then there's some things that clearly don't, right? If a victim is telling you about the breakfast they had that morning, but it has nothing to do with the crime, that doesn't need to be in the report, obviously. So part of becoming a professional police officer is figuring out what is relevant and what isn't. All right, so I've got a report here for you guys. This is also completely fake, but representative of what you will see in our real report. So feel free to read through it and ask any questions. It's been redacted, just like a real report would be redacted. So all personally identifying information has been blanked out. This theoretically could come, let's say, if this is a very simple trespassing arrest, but if the person makes a complaint that he was mistreated or arrested improperly, this is kind of the first thing that would kind of tell the story of what happened. So feel free to read through it, and then I'm happy to answer any questions if you have it.
So the reported time, is that the time that a call is sent to the officer, not the time that the officer wrote the report?
Correct.
Right.
That's the time that either the call came into dispatch, or if the officer self-initiated, saw something happening and marked out on the radio, it's that time that that event was created. And the last sheet, or booking sheet, that's what's created when you fill out an arrest report. So as you can see, it's just a bunch of data fields. You print that out and you actually turn it to the deputies when you bring someone to the booking.
So this would be redacted, just, this is public or?
No, police
No.
reports in Virginia are generally not releasable. There's a few exceptions under FOIA where they are, like if the victim of a crime is able to get a copy, or if it's a
Of a closed case.
of a closed case, right? The case has to be completely through the court system, or we're not going to be going through the court system. And the victim can get a copy, or if it's a juvenile victim, the parent, and if I think the person is deceased, and their one of their immediate family members or their state representative can get a copy.
So who are the redactions for?
What do you mean?
Well, so, I mean, you said you receive redactions.
So if you release a report through FOIA, you do not release witness informations or witness names or any.
Right, so this could be FOIA. Is that what you're saying?
No. Well, it depends.
Yes.
It could, if it's depending on who the victim is in that situation, and it's a
And
closed.
then it would be redacted?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
gotcha, yeah.
So I have a question. I realize this would be difficult. But, one thing that might occur to somebody reading this would be, well, did he seem aware of his surroundings? Did he seem like he understood what was going on? Did he seem like maybe he was having a mental, and that's not in there. Now, I can see why that would be difficult because the policeman's guessing. But in some ways, that's still relevant information. How would you capture that?
But I'm happy to.
Yeah, so one of the things from the CIT portion of the training is being able to identify it. If it was something that was specific into their personality or something that reflected from what they were, that cued them in, they're going to include it if it was something that was relevant to that piece of information. And as Matt said, not everything's going to be included in the actual report. But generally speaking, if this was something that resulted into someone that may have been showing signs of bipolar or anything like that, they would put those signs in there because that's what they've learned throughout their CIT training.
And what would they do in that instance? I mean, because if you're arresting somebody who's clearly or potentially in a bipolar incident, I mean, again, I feel for the police, you only have certain tools at your disposal to work with certain situations, but do you have other options, or what could you?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the degree, and it depends on what's going on, right? If it's a trespassing call where clearly maybe the person doesn't realize what's going on, then it very likely is going to be handled as a mental health call. And if the person meets the criteria for being detained, which are very specific, then the person could theoretically be detained, and forced to get at least a couple days of treatment. If it's something where they're, aware of the problem of the mental health issue they're dealing, and they want to get help voluntarily, then we can facilitate that also. If it's something where it just takes a little extra time to convince them that they aren't supposed to be where they are, and they can talk to them and make that happen. And that's our first choice everywhere. But clearly, once this is being written with an arrest report, all of that has either been done or the officer has just already gone through the mental checklist of that's not possible. And I would just say that if you read between the lines on this, there actually is evidence that he's aware of what's going on. He told the same story as the witness. He understood, he paid for his drinks. He then wants to be comped and he's not being comped. I mean, it may not explicitly say in here he was oriented as to time and place, but I think that the way that this was written communicates that, there were no indicators of him not understanding this.
So this would be the opposite, but you wouldn't write, he seemed happy. You would say he appeared to be smiling, he was smiling and laughing and talking with the person next to him.
Yeah, if you were trying to describe something like that.
Right, if you were trying to describe like mental behavior or disposition, you would just describe your observations of what they were doing, not he appeared to be having a manic episode.
But I think it's important to note that we don't describe someone who is not having mental health.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's the opposite.
Right.
You know, you wouldn't say they're happy, but
Correct.
if you were trying to describe whatever the symptoms were, you wouldn't
Correct.
diagnose, you would just say what you were observing.
Right. Yes, yes. Yeah. And the other thing, again, and again, it wouldn't apply to a trespassing, but somebody who is into mental health, even a crisis, can still commit a crime, right?
Oh, sure.
And whether or not they're convicted of it is a issue for the court, and there are mental health-based defenses they can present in court. So I just think it's also important to note that too. For something where nobody gets hurt and it's a minor quality of life crime like this, I'm not saying that that's the route we're gonna go, but obviously if somebody commits a heinous crime where people get hurt, then that's, all of those issues will come up.
They went over the criteria in the last training. It was harm to self, harm to others, and unable to care for yourself.
Well, it's suffering from a mental illness. Suffering from a mental illness and unable to seek help or unwilling to seek help voluntarily. Those are the first two, and those are really important. We often skip right to the harm to self, or harm to others, or unable to care for yourself. But before you even get to those criteria, the first two by code are they have a mental illness. You have to have that. It can't be because, I don't know, they're just a bad person or whatever. It's got to be due to a mental illness. So you have to have some probable cause that they suffer from a mental illness, and you have to ask and see if they're willing and able to seek help voluntarily. You can't detain somebody if you don't check those two boxes first. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
That's my time. I'm happy to answer any questions. My contact information, if you get the presentation, is on there. I'm happy to answer them. Again, I appreciate your time today.
Thank you. I do have a question.
Yeah.
I wanted to just acknowledge a question that was in the chat from a resident who has joined us tonight. Thank you, Mr. Roberts, for joining us. We don't typically have this forum doesn't necessarily allow for like two-way communication for us to like be able to answer and ask questions in the chat. But after tonight's meeting, we're going to be passing the electronic meeting policy, and we're going to have a forum on the COB website where you can type in questions in advance, and those will be shared with the board members, or there'll also be space for public comment in those meetings. But I'll ask the question on your behalf, if that's okay, and I'll just read it directly from the chat. How does LERMS interact with NCIC and other federal databases concerning interactions with the public?
That's a great question, and it's actually something I forgot to go over when we talked about why we write reports. So there is certain data that is required to be reported to the state, crime statistics data in particular. That's aggregated data. It's not personally identifiable information. So depending on the crime and the arrest, that information is reported to the state in the aggregate. So not with anybody's individually identifiable information. The only information that goes into NCIC or VEASAN with personally identifiable information is information like when someone is wanted, when there's a warrant for their arrest, or something else that is required to be entered into VEASAN. And that information generally doesn't come directly out of LERMS. It's generally entered through a form that an officer fills out individually. So I hope that answers the question. I always say to officers, there's no crime stats fairy that flies around Arlington and counts 1 larceny, 2 assault. They come directly out of the reports we write. And that's why it's so important for officers to be accurate and pick the right offense when they're writing these reports, because otherwise, our crime stats would be all out of whack.
Will we get a presentation from the IT folks on the data warehouse sort of?
They are scheduled to be one of them.
Okay, great, cool. Great. I won't pester you.
Good, because you've reached the limits of my knowledge.
So
That is not a true statement.
Yeah, he's way smarter than that. One of the things in terms of meeting those requirements and getting that data in the system, how that works from a record standpoint is every month records is due by the 14th to have the previous month of records into the system and sends that report of the data. And what that data includes is every crime that was committed and any updates to arrests. So you may think about it this way: I may commit the crime in December, however, I'm not arrested until February. So that updated data of arrest gets pushed in February, which updates the initial case that was sent from December. So one of the things that, in terms of that, the state has a lot of different requirements when you push, and I call it push the information through the system. And that system in itself, which is state system, if you look at that and when he speaks to the aggregate of it, the report is nothing but a bunch of 1s, 0s, and 9s. So there's no personal data in that. It's basically filling those boxes in those spaces. And it creates that report that that state is able to pull up that has that information to its 1s, 0s, and 9s. Is that right?
What's that?
1s, 0s, and 9s. Pretty much in the report of the.
For how many of each crime?
Yeah, yeah. When we push the numbers every month.
Oh, like how it's
Yes,
actually
the
reported.
coding.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Yeah. So each one of those are how that information gets pushed. So it's not simple English looking at this report and knowing that it's being pushed correctly. You literally can't read it unless you know the codes. Like what box 74, line 74, it literally is computer code. So it's not people's, as he said, personal information, but that is done monthly. And that's what creates state's end of the year report for that information for the crimes that are committed and the arrests that were made associated with those crimes. That makes sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, this was very helpful to like the front end of what feeds that, data process, like, everything from the patrol car and the mobile app to the different levels of the different systems and interfacing with DMV, really, really helpful.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
All right. So I know Lisa wanted to take a 10-minute break.
So I'm gonna take a vote. Do you want to power through and take a break after the next presentation so our colleagues can go home? Or do you want to take it now? I don't care. It's up to you. 5 minutes now, or we can push it off after the next presentation.
But
You want to take 5 now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So back, oh, wait a minute. Can't do that.
I so moved.
Thank you. Wait, this is why I write everything down, because I don't remember anything. And I have to go read it because I don't remember what I wrote. So, okay. So I'll entertain a motion to stay in recess until 7:11.
I so moved.
Oh, great. Anybody want a second?
I'll second it.
Everybody in favor?
Bye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, 5 minutes. We're back. I'm sorry. We took a couple minutes longer. My apologies. So I am going to turn it over to Captain Chamberlain for our next presentation.
All right, so our next presenter is Lieutenant Matthew Owens. He is the administrator of our digital evidence management system, and he is very happy to be in that position.
I am. And I couldn't tell you how I got it.
Practice.
Left my happy place as an evening watch commander right before I was asked forcefully, no, I'm just kidding. Before I was offered the opportunity to take this assignment, and
For the record, I asked nice.
she did ask nice.
Voluntold was the technical term.
There you go. I said, well, could I get a car? She goes, no. Okay, well then, yes. Before I get started on this stuff, I thank you all for being here. I don't know if anybody else has done that yet, but I think that this is crucial for helping us to kind of retain or rebuild some of the trust that we've lost over the years. So you all have a very important mission, and I appreciate you all being here. And you're going to interact a lot with my program, program that I'm currently in charge of, and I think it's important that you understand its capabilities and its limitations. So thank you for having me as well. As Captain Chamberlain said, my name's Matt Owens. It's easy because the other one was a Matt too, so it should be pretty easy. Our digital evidence management system is just exactly what it says. It is a housing for all of our digital evidence. And we like to make sure that is secure. So we recently went into a contract with Axon. That's why you have body cameras in front of you. They also provide our in-car camera system and our interview room camera system as well. So today, I'm going to go real quickly over what you're holding in front of you is the latest and greatest from Axon. I think they're still about 12 months away from the Body 4. But that's the Axon Body 3. It's pretty much the best body camera on the market when it comes to the technology, the features, the storage. We'll talk about its operating functions, how you're gonna see it interactive when you're doing ride-alongs, and how you're gonna, so you can kind of understand what the officers are doing when they're using it. We'll talk about Respond and Respond Plus. More on that later. We'll talk about some of these. This is how we wear the actual body cameras. Axon Capture and Axon Citizen are a couple of apps that also came with our contract that we use regularly. And we'll talk about evidence storage and access and what we're looking at moving forward with this program and all of its fun toys. So what you're holding, like I said, it's the latest and greatest. It's got a 12+ hour battery life, which means if we turn the power on and we hit the record button, it will record for 12 hours at least, depending on weather. So if it's really, really cold, we'll lose a little bit of battery degradation. But under normal use, it'll record for 12+ hours. The camera itself will hold 24 hours worth of footage. And that's never been an issue for us because each of our officers are issued 2 cameras, one that they wear, one that sits in the charging dock, staying ready to go. So if in the middle of their shift they have to swap out because their battery dies or something happens to it, there's not going to be a lot of downtime getting them a second camera. It records in 720 HD. The reason we use 720 is because that's essentially what the human eye sees. Now, there are people out there like Bryce Harper who see in 1080 or better. I don't. And most human beings do not see any clearer than 720. So next time you're at Best Buy and the guy's really trying to sell you on that 5K TV, and the 4K is a little bit cheaper, that's up to you.
So what does 720 refer to?
That's the clarity of the picture, right? The number of
like the number of pixels.
Correct.
Okay.
Also recording in 30 frames per second because essentially that is also what the human eye sees, right? So this is a digital evidence cabinet, but it's also there to help protect the officer so that it shows a visual representation of what the officer could have seen, right? So we don't want to capture something in 1080 that you can then zoom in, 10 hours after the fact and see, the leaf on the tree was brown instead of green. We are interested in seeing a depiction of what the officer can see at the time that we see it.
It's dots per inch.
Oh, okay.
Is that what it is? All right, there you go. Much like Matt exceeded his technical expertise with setting it, I'll do that as well. 146 diagonal field of view, which basically means it's a really wide angle fisheye lens. You'll watch this. And I'm sure you've seen body camera footage on TV before. You'll probably see a lot in this job that you're doing now. It's going to be a little bit fisheye toward the end, but believe it or not, that's also what our eye does. You can't look for it though because you get dizzy trying to do that. IP67 rating basically means that it's water resistant and dust proof, right? A little, as an example of how durable it is, there was a case in Phoenix, Arizona, where there was an officer involved in a shooting. The officer actually got killed. The officers retreated. One of their body cameras fell off. The bad guy picked up the body camera, went like this, looked right into the camera lens, and then promptly threw it in the toilet.
They're not geniuses. Okay.
Yeah, well, but he threw it in the toilet so that it would erase all the evidence. After the SWAT standoff and the guy was taken into custody, they recovered the camera, which had died. They sent it back to Axon. Axon plugged it in, recovered the entire footage, even after being in the toilet, could hear the SWAT commands from outside the house, into the toilet water, into the camera. And they were able to, prosecute this guy really well. It's got embedded GPS in it. It also has 2 SIM cards in there for LTE connectivity. So it's very, very robust when it comes to connection. We do lose connection with the camera, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to respond. In some buildings, Yorktown High School for one, we had some issues with staying connected to the cameras. Respond and Respond Plus, it's capable of doing both of those. And multicam playback, which I'll show you an example of later, which allows a supervisor or a reviewer to watch up to 4 cameras at once, all simulcast because the cameras talk to each other via secure Bluetooth. It's pretty fascinating.
Respond and Respond Plus?
So Respond and Respond Plus, and I think I have a slide in here, but it's basically our ability to play big brother to the officers that are out there as supervisors. So like I said, it's GPS enabled. So when it's recording, it's giving live time GPS locations to the system, and we can go up, pull that up on a map, see exactly where every officer is, and with the addition of our new in-car camera systems, where every vehicle is. It also allows us the ability to live stream those cameras when they're being recorded. So we can activate that remotely. If the camera is being recorded, it shows up as an option for us to live stream. We hit a button. From here, we can watch an officer out on the street in live time. It's not done surreptitiously. The officer is notified about it at the time, and we do have language coming forth that basically governs the usage of that. But a supervisor can do that anytime they feel they have an operational need.
Is that recorded?
It is, yes. So it's only when the camera is recording, right? And again, the supervisor would have access to view this video at any time after it's being uploaded, because there's no way to delete anything off of the camera.
Can that be provided in discovery to the prosecutor?
Yep, 100%. This one thing about this system is that the audit log that it contains is extremely robust. Every keystroke, every button push, every power on, power off, every time it's connected to a dock, it's all logged into an audit trail. I spend a lot of time looking at those within my job just to find out what happened, why something didn't happen. We had a recruit officer recently, they're a solo officer now, but looking for evidence from when they were a recruit officer for a call for service, and they just forgot to turn their camera on. And he was like, I'm pretty sure it got deleted. And I'm like, well, no, it didn't. You just forgot to turn it on. So it happens, specifically with the newer officers that haven't developed that muscle memory yet. I'll get to the looking forward part, but one of the things we'd like to see is the officers actually have access to these in the academy so they can start building that muscle memory before they hit the street. That's going to take a little bit of doing, but.
My ride-along said the muscle memory of turning it off when you go into the restroom.
Yes.
It's like remembering your camera.
That's a new feature that they added maybe only a year ago as a sleep mode. So it actually, you can turn off, and I'll show you the pre-event buffer as well. The camera is always recording when it's powered on. So right now my camera is powered on and it is recording, but it's not capturing anything except for the last 60 seconds until I hit the record button. And we'll show you an example of what that looks like and how that is a little bit later.
So is there some version coming to take turn it on, off?
So there are several.
Is there something coming?
It's a great question, Gary, and I've got a slide for you on this one. So go to the next one.
Can I just ask
yes.
before that, you mentioned Yorktown.
Yes.
You referring to what happened like a year ago?
Yeah, there was a call for a subject that said he had taken hostages in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Right? So
My son was there at the time, so
Was he really?
yeah, he was.
Sorry.
So that's okay.
So our officers responded. They did exactly what they were trained to do. I was actually up in the emergency operations center with Deputy Chief Vincent and Captain Linder. We were monitoring the situation remotely through the body cameras. So we were live streaming several of the contact teams body cameras. As they moved into the school, we lost cellular connection. And I'm sure that's a design of the school so the kids aren't on their phone. But it is something that caused us a little bit of an issue. That being said, it didn't affect the operability of the officers that were there. They weren't notified. The recording is all still there. It's all housed in the camera until it's.
Oh, is this your ability to access it?
Just our ability to
okay.
watch it.
I was just curious.
Just our ability to watch it remotely. So
Okay.
our situational awareness, which was very, very low on the priority list, was impacted, but the folks that were actually out there doing the work, not impacted at all.
Did you tell Yorktown? I'm just curious. If
About-
you guys, that you had a little bit of difficulty, I realized that was not the priority, was
Right.
being able for you guys to see what was going on. But I'm wondering, for security reasons, it would be better if that didn't happen. I was just wondering if Yorktown was even aware of it. But
So we've done in-depth after action, after that incident, we continue to have ongoing conversations about, what went well, where we can make changes, things that we need to focus on. So any significant event like that, we do an actual formal after action meeting. And so we're mostly accomplished, but there's still some follow-ups that we're finishing in regards to those conversations for if there's a large scale event in the future to make sure that, school staff can be identifiable by police. So if they aren't in the school, but they need to get there to be a part of the response. So there's some things we're still following up on to fix.
okay, I was just curious. Thanks.
All right. And Gary, yes, we do have ways of these cameras activating themselves, and I will go over that. I just have a really cool slide.
And it
I
seems
didn't
like
make.
randomly every year you hear about some city or county.
Yep.
Like you said, new officer.
Absolutely.
Means to do it, just doesn't.
And I'm wearing another device today that I'll show you a little bit later that is hopefully the future for us if we don't make it. So pick up your cameras if you don't mind. This is the interactive part. So I brought one for each of you. Again, these are unassigned. These are just sitting at my desk waiting. But if you look up at the top corner here, you see the thing that looks like a power button on every other device. If you just press and hold that until it vibrates in your hand, and then you look down and you'll see Axon's logo show up on the LCD screen on the top. It takes about 15 seconds for these to power on, so we like to keep them on at all times. So when the officers are out on the road, they're not expected to turn these off at any time. So when they go use the bathroom, there's a function that they're allowed to put it in called sleep mode. But like I said, when it's on, it's always recording and constantly keeping a previous 60-second loop of what has occurred of video only, no audio. So that's the power button on the front of the camera. You can see the camera lens. Also, the big round button in the middle, which on the picture up here has red around it, but this one doesn't, that's the event button. That's what the officers are going to use to start and stop the camera recordings manually. Next one, sorry. This one we just burned through really quick. This right next to the camera lens is a speaker. It does make noises to alert the officers of what its status is. Every 2 minutes when the camera is recording, it has an audible beep. Sometimes you may have heard that on some of the body camera recordings where you hear go beep beep, and you will definitely hear that on ours because that is there to remind the officer, hey, look, I'm still recording you and I've still got your back, or hey, dummy, your call was over 2 minutes ago. You can turn me off now. So it's a very, very good feature for us, and the officers seem to like it. There are 4 microphones on this camera. There are 2 on the front and then 2 on the bottom. They are very sensitive. They will hear whispers. They hear a lot of the rustling if somebody bangs up against it. Originally, they were designed to be capable of gunshot detection. So if the officer fired his or her weapon, that the camera would automatically activate. They haven't quite figured out that algorithm yet. So unfortunately, if a loud motorcycle goes by or somebody sneezes too loud, it would activate the camera, send out an alert to the officer's supervisor that they just fired their weapon. And the supervisors are stressed out enough as it is. They don't need to be contacted, 15 times a day because I've got a cold that I'm out there shooting everybody or just firing my weapon willy-nilly. So we don't have that feature activated right now, but like I said, we have another new piece of technology that they've come out with recently that may take the place of that, hopefully. So once they do get that figured out, though, we're going to activate that because that is a very important feature. On the top is an LCD screen. It shows what the what the camera does, what the camera's doing. Right now it says ready, so that means it's in buffering mode. It's constantly got a 60-second loop. It shows the battery life. Like I said, these will last about 12 hours. The first 20% of the battery will strip off very fast for some reason. This camera's happy place is somewhere between 20% and 80%, and will live most of its life in there. So you can go to the next one. On the side are the volume buttons. This is the part that everybody loves, because when you actually push the buttons, it makes noises and lets you know. It can go really, really loud. Yeah. Which actually helped one of our officers out at the Capitol when our CDU team was over there. One of the individuals over there got their hand in between the shield and the body camera, pressed up against the body camera button, shut the camera off. The officer had it cranked up really loud and was able to realize that it had shut off and reached down and restarted it. The way this system is set up with that 60-second pre-event buffer, there was no loss of video. It was a constant video, nothing continuous. It just lost a little bit, just a couple seconds of audio. Those are the volume buttons, so it just lets the officer control. If they're having a conversation with somebody that they don't want to constantly be interrupted by it being that loud every 2 minutes, they can turn it down and turn it into just the vibrate mode, so it just vibrates. So you mentioned how they can be activated remotely, right? So all of our in-car cameras are equipped with the Axon signal technology. So if an officer turns their light bar on, it sends out a signal. Every camera within 30 feet will be activated for 30 seconds. So if a hot call goes out and the officer jumps in their car and they just hit their lights and their siren and off they go, it's going to activate the in-car cameras. It's going to activate their body camera as well, and any body cameras in the car with them. So if there are 2 officers and they're going to go run lights and sirens to a robbery, for instance, they may not think, oh, I should start my body camera, because their focus is stop the bad guy, catch the bad guy, stop the threat. The system does it for them, right? It's one of these ways that we make the system cop-proof, because we're our own worst enemies sometimes. So the system itself actually activates the body camera for you. One of the other pieces that it does is the taser that we carry, the conducted energy weapon that Taser makes, is also manufactured by Axon. And every time you activate, you take the safety off of a Taser 7, which is the only Taser that our officers carry. It sends out that same 30-second pulse. Every camera within 30 feet is activated. Side note, the very first body camera recordings that we made in Arlington after we went live were because an officer was about to spark test their Taser before their shift, which they're required to do. Right after everybody had turned their body cameras on at 5:30 in the morning on December 16th, I think it was, you can hear me screaming and yelling because they function test their Taser incorrectly, flip the safety off on the Taser, and everybody's body camera activated. So the third piece, and I'm just going to stand up and do my best modeling, is called the signal sidearm, and it's an actual attachment that goes onto a holster. So if I'm not going to do it because there's no reason to, if I were to remove my firearm from the holster, it would send that exact same signal, activate every body camera in this room, and it would send that signal for 30 seconds. So any officer coming up to the scene and gets within 30 feet of the signal device would also be activated. So it's another one of the, yes ma'am.
When the 30-second signal goes off, is it making like an audible noise that reminds an officer to turn it on?
Unfortunately, no, and that's by design. The Taser and I'm sorry, not unfortunately, no, but it's more because they don't want to potentially cause one of us to be, if they were in a tactical situation where we have to remove our holster, we don't want anybody to know where we are. So yeah, it doesn't make an audible signal, but it just, if you enter into that bubble, and it's a 30-foot bubble, so above or below, and all the way around, for that 30 seconds, your camera will activate while it's still going up.
And then after the 30 seconds, it's going to go off, right?
The signal shuts itself off, that's correct.
But now the camera stays on.
The camera stays
Still is
on.
doing that 60-second delay.
The camera stays activated until someone turns it off manually.
Thank you, I probably should ask.
No
That's what I was trying to get at.
The interesting thing specifically about the Taser is the Taser can be used several different ways, right? So you can arm the Taser, and that will broadcast that signal. If there is a trigger press of the Taser, if the Taser is actually deployed, it will send out another 30-second signal. If we have to deploy a second taser shot for whatever reason, there will be another signal sent out. If we just do what's called a spark display, right, which is sometimes a technique that we use to gain compliance without actually using the force, we can actually make the taser make its noise, show its spark on the front, and maybe somebody that was thinking about, not necessarily complying with our instructions might think twice about it because they've seen videos on TV. So if that spark display happens, it also activates the taser signal again. The signal's higher.
So the primary function of the 30 seconds is that officers could keep arriving on scene while
Correct.
something is unfolding.
Yep.
So each time, whether I pull it, I arm it, or I use it.
Not if you pull it, but only if you arm it.
Okay.
So now, if I draw my firearm, and right now I'm the only person in the county that has one. We have 6 units to test to find out if these are going to be viable for us. Sometimes technology promises a lot of things and doesn't exactly deliver the way, like the gunshot detection on the camera, right? I wouldn't want to put all my eggs in that basket. So we're going to test it. We're going to see if we can break it. We're going to see if there's a way that this is going to work for us, and if it does, we're going to try to. Hopefully, we're going to try to get a hold of it. So
all of this is off of, what signal? Is it a?
it's an RF signal. I think it's a radio frequency.
Oh, radio.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Now-
no Wi-Fi and stuff.
Right now, the cameras themselves talk to each other via secured Bluetooth and secured Wi-Fi.
Oh,
So we can actually interact with video on here via our mobile data terminal in the car or our phone. And we'll talk about that here in a minute too. But the videos themselves always stay on this internal hard drive until they're docked, uploaded through a secured internet site, and off they go. Then they're deleted off the camera.
you ever had the Wi-Fi go down?
It happens from time to time. We tested it recently. We had that burglary where somebody was using a radio signal jammer, which supposedly also messed up with Wi-Fi, and it messed up Bluetooth and all that kind of stuff. We actually tested this up against it. Had no effect on the recording, no effect on the evidence collection. When you were within maybe a foot of the device itself, which was supposed to be the most powerful one that you can buy on the civilian market, that was when you lost Bluetooth connectivity the cellular connectivity to it. But the Bluetooth still talk to each other. So the multicam feature still worked. All of the connectivity still worked. So, any more questions about the signal before we move on? All right, cool. So I mentioned buffering mode. Like I said, every camera right now is keeping that 60-second buffer. And what we're going to watch next is a video of a police incident. It happened right on the 14th Street side of the police station. Lost you. There we go. It does involve a use of force. It involves the use of the taser. This was an incident that could have ended much differently, and I think you guys will see why. But you'll watch at the beginning of the video, you won't hear any audio, and you won't hear any audio because it's on that pre-event buffer. You'll hear when you hear the audio start. That's when the officer actually activated their camera. Okay. Everybody see that? Okay. I've added a couple of highlights to kind of give you an idea of what to watch for. Those are knives. That's when he activated started this camera. So that shot that you heard was a taser. As you can see, it was not effective. You can hear the alarm going off on the officer's taser, not telling him there's a malfunction. That's an effective taser. Okay. and you could see the knife in his hand, right? He had two of them. Now, there's a lot of things that went really well in this video. Number one, the officer involved sounded like he was ordering a pizza on the radio. He was very calm. He was very aware of his surroundings. One thing you may not have heard, this is the first time you've seen this, is the individual in the blue plaid shirt saying, "Kill me. I want you to kill me." At the end of the video, after we get him in custody, now he gets placed in custody. He sustains no injuries other than the taser probe. But you can imagine, well, I'm sure you can imagine how this could have happened in a number of different ways.
Yeah, I just, by the by, I mean, I had a case when I was in the DC U.S. Attorney's Office doing civil work at that point, where there was a guy with a knife in front of the White House, and Secret Service were lined up 15 feet apart saying, "Drop the knife." Park police guy came up and shot and killed him. Yep, just immediately shot and killed him. And we defended the case, and we actually got, but I mean, this could have gone any number of ways, like you say.
So and to illustrate the pre-event buffer, if this video starts just when he starts his video, right? I mean, I think, you know, if he pulls out a gun initially and we shoot him because we're that close and he's got a gun and he starts the camera after the fact, it doesn't, you know, you don't see the whole picture. This pre-event buffer, even though it's 60 seconds of possibly irrelevant material, still offers that approach. It offers him showing up, walking, showing his hands like this, and then reaching in and pulling out the knives. Is a good illustration of what that pre-event buffer is designed to capture. At the end of this video, he actually, after he's in handcuffs, he actually says the words, "I just wanted you to kill me." So this was an attempt suicide, putting this officer in harm's way, forcing him to make probably the most horrific decision he would have ever had to make as a cop. And luckily he was attentive to training and paid attention and kept his calm and just did nothing short of heroic job, in my opinion. So what I want to show you next is what I talked about with the multicam, right? Now, so these are 4 different body cameras from the same event, 4 different locations. First body camera on the top left is the one you just watched. The body camera on the right is the officer who actually ends up tasing him. That's Officer J.P. Montoya. Bottom left is an officer who's sitting in the police station typing up, actually looks like he's doing the stolen vehicle entry into NCIC. And then the officer on the right is a little bit far away, but in his car. And you can see the reactions when, and this is all because they were in proximity to each other for a long enough period of time. The cameras all linked together, and we can watch these all simulcast. So you'll see the first one starts first, followed by that one, and then the other 2 right around.
But this is the 30 feet.
Nope, this is not the 30 feet. This is the multicam. This is the way that you may see some of these videos presented to you.
So granted, where he is in this third box at the bottom, he's literally on the other side of that inside the building.
Okay.
So just to get up.
You'll hear him, because this is actually the audio that you're going to hear on the bottom left, and just because I accidentally hit the wrong button, but you'll hear him being told by the officer who's holding him at gunpoint, "Get out of the way, get out of the way," because he's standing directly behind the bad guy. So not only was the officer calm, cool, and collected when he was delivering his commands and his radio instructions, he's also paying attention to his surroundings and saying, "Hey, look, if I have to shoot this guy, you're in my way now, and I can't do that."
So Matt, if I heard that right, the question, there's a 30-foot bubble that instantaneous, but once, I don't know if it's a max of 4 cameras have synced. I mean, is that multi-cam?
So it's actually, the cameras sync together when they're talking. So right now, if we were to start a camera, we started recording right now, all of our cameras, we would be able to watch in simulcast in multicam.
What kind of distance is multicam? What kind of bubble? It's not 30 feet anymore.
It's not 30 feet. It's a little bit wider.
It's wider, yeah.
I believe it's 45, but they have to be within proximity to each other for a certain period of time.
Okay.
So if we're just walking by each other, right, and then the cameras never talk to each other again, you won't.
But it's only when
we're around each other for a really long period of time, they're able to kind of seek out and find.
And that's what we see with these other ones. They've connected. Okay.
Right. They're not around each other right away, but they eventually are.
Okay.
And the cameras know, hey, let's link this in evidence.com in case they want to watch it like this.
Okay.
So again, up on the left-hand side is the actual incident unfolding from Officer Brown's body camera. On the right, we're gonna get to see, now this is the full 60-second pre-event buffer, so you can actually see the gentleman walking up to the courthouse. So he was actually trying to get into the courthouse to maybe do that in there. Not entirely sure what that. But now Officer Montoya is just doing what Officer Montoya does best, and that's community interaction. He's our Latino liaison officer. He's one of the finest human beings I've ever met. He's a war hero. He's a great guy, and he's going to pet this nice little pooch here shortly. But this, again, this is all captured on their pre-event buffer. And we've got, I'm pretty sure I did a good job blurring out all the PII. Don't pay any attention to the bottom left-hand corner there. And now our guy on the bottom right here, he's parked, he's stopped, doing something on his phone, doing something on his computer. So now Officer Brown is going to activate his camera, right? And you'll see the pause from Officer Montoya, realizing, hey, wait a minute, that's right where I am. We got a guy running to the scene. And this guy is pulling up on Courthouse Road in his car. See on the bottom left, he comes in before he realizes it's part of his way. You can see it gives us the ability to see multiple angles, right? Which is crucial for us. We want to know everything that went on, not just what one person says or what one person's camera. So we want to see as many as possible. So, questions about the multicam or any of the features there? All right, now you guys get to make a recording. All right, so if you pick up your cameras, right, and you press that big round event button twice. All right, everybody gets a double beep. Oh, somebody turned yours on.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's
mine
okay.
was off.
That's okay. Everybody else pressed it and got a double beep, right? And our ready thing went away. Our flashy green light becomes a flashy red light, right? And that lets the officer know at a quick glance, looking down, hey, my camera's recording now. Okay, got it. The gentleman that came up and taught us from Axon, that taught us the basic course before I got certified to teach the officers, had this great spiel where he went on for 2 minutes exactly in this great little story that he told, and then he points at the whole class like this because everybody started it at the same time, and everybody's camera beeps at the same time. I don't have my timing down for that. Sorry, Chief. My theatrics are a little bit weak. But like I said, every 2 minutes that this camera is recording, it's going to beep at you and remind you, hey, I'm still recording. All right. The icon, I have to explain this to some of the newer officers that have never actually seen a VHS camcorder. They don't know what that was at the time. Why they went with that, I don't know. That's what Axon decided to go with.
So you're saying we're all old in this room?
I'm saying I'm old, right? So.
That's the problem with the save icon on Microsoft Word.
Yes.
People don't know what a floppy disk is.
Exactly. That's the save button, right? Of course it is. So the reason it takes 2 presses to start the camera is we want it to be an intentional act, right? We want it to be something that the officer has to go, okay, press, good. I'm recording now. We don't want them running into, actually it was funny. I was talking to one of our canine officers, Dan Russo, and he says his dog constantly comes up and double presses the button, right? I always thought it would just be the one, but I guess, Astor's a big, love bug, so he likes to press the button. But that's one thing we were trying to avoid was a lot of accidental activation. Sorry, Axon was trying to avoid when they built it was, there's our 2-minute warning, right? It's what it feels like. The officers feel that vibration. They hear that. We want that. It's supposed to be an intentional act to do it. We don't want a lot of accidental activations. Now, in order to stop the recording, you're going to press and hold that same button for 3 seconds, right? And you may ask, well, why is it different to stop the recording, right? And when you stop the recording, you get a nice, long, loud beep to say, hey, turn it off now. Are you sure you want me to do it? That's what the officer at the Capitol heard and was like, nope, up, hit it again, off we go. The reason it's it's different than starting it is because there was actually a case in Chicago where there was an officer involved shooting. The officer reached down double pressed it to start it, didn't hear the beeps, double pressed it again, and actually it had started and ended up stopping, and there was no video. So intentional act to start, intentional act to stop, two different motions, so we don't have, so we can try to eliminate as much ambiguity as possible. So we talked a little bit. I told you about the ability to see the cameras out there in the real world. Maybe. What do I need to do? You just go to Chrome and type it in. Oh, you don't have to do that. Take my word for it, it's really cool. If you guys really want to see it after I'm done, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but it's very neat. It shows a map of where everything is. We might actually see a car down in Winchester or wherever doing a transport out to one of the mental health facilities if we brought it up. But it shows the GPS location of every body camera. Now, when it's recording, it's every second, so it's real time. When it's not recording, that is sent out every 15 minutes. So even if we have an officer that goes, can't answer the radio, but their camera's not recorded, we at least know where they were at least 15 minutes ago. So, but that signal updates every 15 minutes. But it allows us also to live stream, and I mentioned the live stream is really cool. It's not secret. We're not trying to spy on the officers. The officers are notified about it immediately. As soon as they hit the live stream button, the camera beeps just like it does for the 2 minutes, and the flashy red light turns into a flashy purple light, and it actually says the word live underneath the screen. And again, the officers are used to it. Our patrol supervisors do it on a regular basis to monitor the officers, to check on them. If they're not answering the radio but they're recording, they can visibly see that. We had one officer who's since retired, pulled his taser because there was an individual being combative. They couldn't get a hold of that officer on the radio. The supervisor was able to log right in, see that the officer was, number one, okay, and number two, in a situation where he needed help, and was able to direct resources to that exact GPS location and let the officers know what they were getting into before they got there. So I mentioned we used it at Yorktown as well to give situational awareness as to what the contact teams were doing. It's a very useful tool for us. Axon Capture is an app that every officer has downloaded on their phone, and every officer gets issued a phone for the e-ticketing. So they also need it to interact with Axon, right? So Axon Capture turns their phone into a digital evidence collection machine. My phone has a much better camera on it than this body camera, right? The megapixels on this thing are beyond my technical expertise to talk about. But we can now leverage that technology that's built into the iPhone and take evidence photos directly from the iPhone, and it goes directly into evidence.com. It eliminates the need for additional camera purchases, right? So the point and shoot cameras that we used to issue, Captain Chamberlain and I were on the road, we used to carry around the Polaroids. She was just one cat in the class ahead of me. So. But yeah, we used to carry around Polaroids, and it would cost us, what, I don't know, 30, 40 bucks. 30, 40 bucks every time we went through 10 pictures, right? And they weren't the greatest cameras in the world. They didn't take good photos, right? Now we can do it in portrait mode if we want. It's really awesome. No, I'm just kidding. It's also an audio recorder, and it can take video. And you might ask, why would we use a video as opposed to the body camera? Well, if I'm searching a car and I find something of relevance, I find a gun or I find drugs in the car, the video I'm going to get from holding this around might be a little bit herky-jerky, but at least this way I'm used to doing selfies, and well, I'm not used to doing stuff. Okay. I outed myself there anyway. But it's going to be a much more higher resolution video, and it allows that to go right to evidence.com. It never lives on the phone. It lives only in the program, so that the evidence collection is very clean and the chain of custody is very clean. And it allows you to, if you miss that step and you just have to take a bunch of photos of something before the storm comes in and blows all your evidence away, you're able to capture that. And then if you have to import it from your phone later, you can do that. The game changer for us is the ability to use Axon Citizen. This is where I'm going to need some audience participation. So let me see if we can get my Citizen. Gary, do you have your phone with you?
Yep.
you take a picture of me?
Wow.
Actually, we should do like a group.
I just did it.
Okay, good. All right, so what this does is it allows the officer on the street to send a one-time portal so that you can upload evidence directly into our evidence.com account without me ever having to touch it, right? So back in the old days, if you were to record a fight at Don Tito's, right, on a Saturday night, in order to get that video from you, because we didn't have body cameras back then, I would have to physically either take your phone and text it to myself or airdrop it to myself, or if you were being very uncooperative, maybe even take your phone, do a search warrant on it to get that evidence so that I can then have that for a successful prosecution. Now it's as simple as a text message. So as we sit here and talk, I'll enter this as training. And do you mind everybody knowing your phone number?
No, probably not on the,
Ready?
not on the recording.
Oh.
Here,
Run,
write it
run,
down.
Well, here, I'll tell you what, why don't you just enter here, right?
Pass it.
All of Arlington will be calling Gary.
I was going to tell you, one of my foster girls goes, I really believe in the love white wine. And I was like,
Okay, good. All right, so
10 years older than you. I'm not like this. I'm gonna call you.
Gary with two
Make
R's,
you
right?
feel bad about your age.
Conversation redeemed. All right, so now that I have your phone number, I am actually gonna send you that very link, right? Which you should
Okay,
have,
just got it.
just getting it right there, right?
Okay.
So now all you need to do is follow the prompts. If you can go to the next slide, I'm sorry, this is still.
So click on the link.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Next one. Next one. There we go, next one. Perfect. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna send that link to him. He's gonna get it. And if you wanna upload that video or that photo of me, I'm sure I look
It's
fantastic.
uploading right now.
Okay, it's uploading right now, and I'm gonna go to myevidence.com on my phone. Did it upload successfully?
It's still doing it.
Okay.
It's on my,
Because I haven't received my alert that says that he's uploaded it, so I get an alert.
still uploading.
Okay,
I don't know what it's like.
it's a big photo.
It's on 5G.
I haven't got it yet. Anyway, what it does is it allows us to do Ring doorbell cameras, iPhone videos. I can send it via text message. I can send it via email. It eliminates the need for a crime scene tech to come out and then capture surveillance camera footage, right? We talked about storage earlier with the chief and David and Gary and I were talking about how everything recorded on an Axon device is unlimited storage for us for our contract, right? Well, going through Citizen enables us to bring evidence in on an Axon device. So
somebody's home security camera.
correct. If they capture the burglar inside the house, I can send an email to them. If their phone is if the phone is too bulky or clunky, I can send it to them in an email. Whatever is the easier medium for them to upload that digital evidence. And it doesn't have to be a video or a photo. It can be a document. It can be a picture of a document. It can be any piece of digital evidence can be uploaded directly into our evidence.com account. The other super benefit, if you want to go forward one more, this is essentially what Gary received, what it looks like. Obviously, he's not Gary, and I'm not.
I just did it.
And then it'll basically prompt.
I just sent it to you.
Okay, good. Yep, and I just got my outlooks. This is Gary Dean submitted the evidence. So I get an email that says that he completed the thing, so he can't say, oh, I sent it to you, and I can go, no, you haven't, right? And that's what it looks like here, so if you go to the next slide, right? Once he gets that notification, which is probably what yours look like.
Yeah,
Right.
just thank you.
If I go to myevidence.com account and I refresh the page, I've got my picture here that Gary sent me.
Very nice.
Very nice. Yeah.
Good, huh?
So,
Sorry. Yes.
so, sounds like we've gotten better with like chain of custody and stuff, right? I mean, I'm seeing chief, so has modern age eliminated saying, well, this is Gary's camera, how do I know this is accurate? You know, I mean, it seems like in the old days, they used to, I don't know, probably look at you, right? I mean, is this,
I mean, it's probably tracked pretty specifically, you know?
It shows, every time you do something to a digital piece of evidence, it's tracked in evidence.com. So if I, right now, just accessing that photo, there's a record, even though I have every right to go in there and this is a training photo, there's an audit trail for that piece of evidence that I can bring up that shows that I sent the link to Gary, that Gary sent it from this phone number, that it went directly to evidence.com, and that right after it got a notification that I received it, I went in there and looked at it.
Can you tell if he edited?
I can't, but the digital forensics folks are amazingly smart, and thank God for that, because I'm not when it comes to that stuff. But they can go in there and look and see if the original photo was edited. Did anybody else binge watch the Johnny Depp trial?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I learned a lot watching it. So there was a lot of talk about photos being. Sorry, she knows. He probably had no clue, but.
The facial reaction of it.
Yes, there was a lot of information talked about with the photos being doctored and photos being edited and all that kind of stuff.
You counted that as work time, right? You were learning stuff, right?
Sorry, overtime. Is that tier 1 or tier 2? No, just kidding.
So one other thing it did is, you know, if your front door was broken, somebody had a glass pane, somebody throws a box and break it. It used to be we would have an officer go, and then we'd have a crime scene person go to take the picture. Now, if the officer's on scene, he or she can take a picture with their phone and upload it into evidence.com. That's simple. So we're not having that second officer go unnecessarily, but really for that type of call, you can file a report online, because if it's late and it happened, I don't know when it happened, over the last 3 or 4 days, you know, the community member can file a complaint online, they can get the link, they can take a picture and upload it. So it's the same result, but it is definitely creating efficiencies with our manpower and staff usage, while at the same time giving people a lot of different opportunities of how to share evidence with us. You know, in old days, we used to have to send people out with thumb drives or laptops to hook into the other person's machine, and now it can be done pretty simply with this. So it is making a big difference.
What about the cameras on the streets? Yeah.
So those are you're talking about the traffic cameras?
Or even the ones that's watching us?
It's funny, I just had a conversation with a guy on the way over here, which is why I was a few minutes late. He was trying to get traffic or video footage of an accident he was involved in up in Clarendon, and it was a traffic camera, which I am 99% sure the DES does not record.
Yeah, so most of traffic cameras, there are
Just
very select few that do, but they don't hold it longer than probably 30 minutes in terms of a loop. But they are for live viewing, capturable.
They do that on purpose, so they don't have to become part of the evidence retention and whatever. Because it's for monitoring, like.
Yeah, so we do get a lot.
Huge crash, call and have somebody go out.
Yeah, so it's being used a lot of times. Those cameras specifically is for our watch desk. They will use that in the event that we have a specific area where an event is currently occurring. So that's good intel, just like the intel that he's talking about when you're on site and the camera is being queued up by a supervisor to see what's going on.
And the other aspect of Citizen, which I think is huge, and we haven't, knock on wood, had to use it yet, is the ability to create a public portal. Whereas the one that I just sent you is an individual portal. It's open for 3 days. You can send me evidence as much as you want. If we have a major incident where we know that there were people there videotaping or videoing or taking photos or documenting in any other way, but we just don't have the manpower to get to everybody to talk to them, we can actually create a public portal, send that out there, and have people send us their evidence proactively. Hey, you know, we had a kidnapping. If you were in the area of Bluemont Park between the hours of such and such and such, I don't have any video data, that please send that to us so that we can review it and do that. One incident that might have been a good application for it was the Four Courts incident, but we had enough officers there responding, got a hold of all the witnesses, got a lot of video.
Anika there.
Anika, you were there?
Yeah, that was Long Island.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, so you saw the response, right? We were able to capture all that. We've not had a need to do that yet, but, you know, it is a capability that's now available to us that didn't exist before. So people can send it in. It's not anonymous. We do ask for a name. With a public portal, I don't know that it can be anonymous, but it's now an option that we didn't have.
You have to send that out through social media.
Yeah, if we were gonna do that, it would be blasted out in every possible, we'd probably do smoke signals and carrier pigeons.
You can also put it as a link on your website and things like that.
We would have it all the way out and everywhere. And it's basically, you click on the link and it takes you right to the portal and it uploads. So again, haven't used it yet. Hopefully we won't ever have an incident where we have to do that, but it is a feature now that we didn't have before.
I want to just make this, I don't want to get a question, because this question is, we'd be here 20 minutes, I don't want to answer it. But I'm glad we're in Arlington. If we were in a different place, you talked about years ago, trust issues. If we were in a place where there was, lots of complaints, severe lack of trust between our county, our police department, and citizens, listening to this, the COG in our independent role, could we have our own independent portal to where maybe people may not upload it to you, but and I don't know what the legalities are. We'd have to, but in the sense of gaining public, be in that aspect of what the COG is here to do. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. We're not there. I'm glad we're not there, but I'm just.
I don't know.
Thing of it is, for that, I would say into what the ordinance has and in terms of what we're using that information for, it's for criminal investigations. And so that part right there, you would not get access to that information according to the ordinance until the investigation is closed.
Until yours was closed.
Yeah.
So I will tell you that the Commonwealth Attorney also has this capability. They have their own incidenceofevidence.com. So if there were ever anything that they wanted to do or request evidence for outside of if it was an investigation that didn't involve us, it was Falls Church or MWA or anybody else that has jurisdiction in Arlington that they were prosecuting on behalf of Virginia State Police, they could also do that same request through their portal.
Yeah, what I was saying specifically is maybe things that they wouldn't share with that investigation that they might share with the independent COG. That's kind of my line of thinking is for our own independent.
Direct evidence, and I don't think we would accept,
There's a pretty heavy burden on retention
exactly.
And preservation and security. Now,
Not sure.
I think there's also a difference between a criminal investigation and an
Yeah,
administrative.
Exactly. I'm not
investigation,
thinking
right?
criminal.
Yeah, with the criminal investigation, then you're, infringing on people's constitutional
Yes.
rights and chain of evidence issues and all kind of different things like that, or chain of custody issues. But I think you're getting at, like, if a community member wanted to file a complaint, for example, and they had pictures or videos that they wanted to attach with it.
Non-criminal,
Yeah.
none of that
Yeah.
stuff. I got that. I'm just talking about a general trust issue.
Yes.
I think that could happen. I think, though, at some point there would be like something that we would address in our MOU that would require us to share that information with internal affairs, so that they could use that in their internal investigation.
Right. Which the
Vice
ordinance,
versa.
the ordinance goes both ways.
Right.
Okay.
But that's strictly for administrative parts of the business.
Correct.
And that's sort of like the traffic data, like they don't store that data because they don't want to be responsible
Yes.
for that retention, but also for us, like, we don't want to make a promise of anonymity or confidentiality to someone that then, because of the courts and FOIA, we can't, hold up. But I think the written complaints, like somebody filing something, I think that's different than additional data.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, it's almost like a more sophisticated complaint. Like arguably, if somebody wanted to communicate with us about an incident, we'll set up a website, we'll set up whatever else, we have to figure that out. And, I don't know that we would use this, but I think what you're describing is another means of communication, basically.
On a non-criminal
Right,
type of thing.
right. I mean,
Officer looked at me wrong.
right, I mean, if they're, I would think they would probably send us, well, who knows, but they would send us, I think, something on, via, via email or something else, but maybe they would only use some other vehicle or medium, maybe.
So I don't want to talk about this, take us too long, but anyway, just the general thought
Sure.
is just non-criminal, and we'll tackle that later.
And evidence.com is where we store everything. It
Is
gets
that
up
for everyone?
for Arlington County specifically. So Arlington County, we do the police department, sheriff's department, and the fire marshals actually also wear body cameras. The sheriff's department, limited members of the sheriff's department are issued body cameras, mainly the folks doing traffic enforcement, it's a process out in the community. I don't believe that there's anybody in the jail wearing them right now. You may see them on the folks that are at the entrance to the courthouse that are doing the security screening. But evidence.com for us is where all of our digital evidence is stored, minus a handful of things. But
No, but I mean, everyone, like Alexandria using. DC.
so Alexandria just went to it. They just signed a contract with Axon. Fairfax uses it. Falls Church does not. I believe they use a different body camera vendor.
So it's about a vendor.
So it's specific to the vendor. Evidence.com is an Axon product. As you're going to find out, Axon has their hand in just about everywhere, as we talk about.
We wanted all of our different types, the video, the car, the body, the room, all in one place.
Okay.
It all gets uploaded into one central hub. It's very easily searchable. It's also very easy to share evidence, which you all will see. Because right now the way we do a FOIA request, if somebody fills out a FOIA request for a body camera that's releasable under FOIA, it's shared via evidence.com. We don't burn a DVD anymore. We don't give a flash drive. We send you an email with a link that allows you to view the evidence within evidence.com. We control the permissions. We're able to say, hey, you can view this for 90 days. You can view this for 120 days. You're allowed to download it if you'd like. So we have those abilities to do that. I would imagine that the majority of the video that we would send to you all, or digital evidence at all that we would send to you all, would be in the form of an access link that you can pull up on the big screen here, watch in here, rewind, play, rewind, zoom in. All the features that are enabled to anybody with those rights would be afforded to you as well. So, and then again, I don't know whether there would be download permissions or not, but that would be, we'd have to have a need for it because it's still going to be housed in ourevidence.com. Any redactions or edits, like the video that where you saw that I drew the box and all that kind of stuff, the original video file still lives untainted in evidence.com until such time as the Library of Virginia requires us to delete it. So
Is it an access feature that allowed you to like follow that guy?
yeah, they have a redaction studio, which was an add-on purchase that we added, which allows us to track faces. So you saw that his face was blurred out, right? But the officers were not. Right? We don't expect the officers to have a reasonable expectation of privacy when they're wearing the camera. So except in the bathroom, we do have that.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm sorry. Okay. When I interned in Baltimore, I think this was back in 2019, they was going through an issue in the city of Baltimore where the county was being held hostage by a hacker.
Okay.
Do you have like concerns with people getting into the system and stuff of that nature?
You've been sleeping in my nightmares. Yes, it is my number one fear. That being said, I've been nothing short of impressed with the technology that Axon's brought to the table. Their security is through Microsoft Azure. That's where everything is cloud-based. I know for a fact that they can't access our videos unless we give them permission to do it. Their security is the thing that sets them apart from every other vendor out there, in my opinion.
In all the early procurement, there were a host of protocols they had to meet. They were by all the, not just the subject matter experts, technology subject matter experts to make sure it met every standard.
And my understanding is they actually exceed that. So, yes, it's my biggest fear because is somebody getting a hold of evidence.com across the country and shutting it down.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, I just don't see that.
That was gonna be my question about the retention at the Library of Virginia. Yep. So how often is the data backed up?
So the data is there and it's always there. Every video that's made is given a category, a retention category. So today, you guys have all recorded videos on Axon evidence, right? And those will get uploaded later today when I go back to my desk.
Oh, that's not a place, that's a protocol?
That's a protocol, right? The Library of Virginia is a state law that
There's not a
says,
backup.
there's, that, well, I'm sure Axon has backup.
There's a backup in the Axon system.
But, you know, we do not have a physical backup somewhere. No. We're talking terabytes on terabytes on terabytes of data, and we've only been recording live for 2 years. So
How long is your contract with Axon?
we expire in 2024, but we're already looking to the future to add on new features and all that kind of stuff. It's a constant conversation for me and the procurement folks and my bosses. So
Yeah, nobody likes procurement.
We did a pilot study in 2016 looking at body cameras. And one of the things we had, I don't know, I think it was 20 officers participated, and we had different vendors for 30 days at a time. And part of what we looked at was the feasibility of trying to store this locally. And when you just extrapolate the video out that those 20 officers had times the entire department times, 40, 50 years, it's
Sure.
clearly
Petabytes.
the way to go is
and
the online and the companies.
And digital evidence isn't getting any smaller. In fact, some of you probably know this better than I do, but it's exponentially growing. I mean, the iPhone 6 taking a photo versus the iPhone 14, which is about to come out. I mean, that file size, that same photo is going to be, just huge. Right? So we're not going. We're going to have to store this stuff for a long time, and evidence.com allows us to do that. Like I said, it's cloud-based, it's secure. All of the access is controlled by myself and Captain Chamberlain. We're the two agency admins right now. That being said, in reality, I probably do all of that. So which is okay with her because she's busy enough. But anyway, evidence is easily shared between us and the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Matter of fact, every attorney in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office and 4 paralegals have access to our system to go in there and find evidence related to criminal matters and import it over to their system. What they do with it after the fact is entirely their responsibility, but we make it very easy for them to get in there and access it. We hold on to it for as long as we have to hold on to it. So there are laws that say we can only, if it's not criminal in nature, we have to get rid of it after X number of days. And if it is, and it's a misdemeanor, or if it's a serious offense, but it's not a major offense, or if it's an offense that's solved, or if it's an offense that's resolved. So we have to maintain evidence. And if you go to the next slide, I'll give you an example of what that looks like. These are some of our retention categories, right? Some of them you see say 90 days, some of them say 10 years. If you look at felony and felony arrest, we're going to keep that for 100 years, right? That's what the current Library of Virginia asks us to do, right? So it's going to hopefully be somebody else's problem by that point if I'm still here in 100 years. Somebody tossed me off the courthouse. But yeah, so we have a bunch of them. Officers can find an appropriate retention category for every video that they make. Sorry if I keep getting here. And that's just an example. So some of them you see it says restricted. That means if they tag it with that retention category, it is automatically restricted to 2 people, myself and Captain Chamberlain. So if we have an incident that involves an administrative investigation, the supervisor doesn't want the other detectives that would normally have access to a video to watch it because it involves an administration, they can restrict that, add themselves, add whoever else in the chain of command need to see that video and do that. We have a specific one for officer-involved shooting, a critical incident, automatically restricts it so that not even the officer can watch that video of what happened until after the investigation, until such time as OPR decides that it's appropriate for them to watch this. And looking to the future. Any questions about the Library of Virginia? I know that I kind of glossed over that, but if you ever suffer from insomnia and you cannot sleep, Google Library of Virginia retention categories for law enforcement and just start reading, and you'll thank me in the morning. Okay, it is a slog to get through that document. This is what we're looking for in the future, and actually the future is now for the first one. Our new in-car camera systems are capable of reading license plates. checking them against an NCIC hot list that is updated 4 times a day by Axon. It's pretty fascinating technology. We've literally been live with it for about a week, and I think we've gotten a recovered stolen auto every day. And one of them was a gang member out of Fairfax that was wanted for stealing the car that he was in. It's a really neat technology that we're testing now to see if it's viable. A little too early to tell, in my opinion, but we've had license plate readers in Arlington for a long time. This is just the next generation of that technology. It's already, the hardware is already installed in our cars. This is just a feature that is now available to us. So we're putting it through its paces. Public safety UAS, yes, that's an uncrewed aerial system, right? My Air Force. But that's drones, right? It's in my opinion one of the next steps for all first responders. And we're going to be deploying those tactically with our emergency response team to mitigate the need to have an encounter with an armed subject. Right? We've used robots in the past. We've used little rolling scout recon robots for a while. We've utilized the fire department's robots for their bomb squad. It makes sense to take a look at the next step in technology. Looking way into the future, if the FAA allows it, drones as a first responder. Chula Vista PD out in California has a bunch of documented cases. They have pre-positioned drones throughout their jurisdiction that they have the authorization to fly beyond visual line of sight, which is one of the requirements of a drone pilot. You have to be able to see a drone. They have the waiver from the FAA to fly just basically off of what their camera is looking at. They had a call for a man with a gun in a park, which obviously you would understand would garner a response from the police department. They put a drone overhead and they saw a guy with a gun-shaped cigarette lighter smoking a joint with his buddy. So instead of 15 officers running in with patrol rifles, they got Officer Friendly showing up and saying, "Hey guys, maybe get a better lighter." I don't know. It's a neat concept that I think we're going to have some difficulty employing in our restricted airspace, but I got my fingers crossed that the FAA is right down the road. So, and virtual reality training is something that Axon currently has now. It's something that we are looking at at the next iteration of our contract, if not sooner. If you've played with virtual reality, it's amazing. They have interoperability with the Taser 7 because they make the Taser, they make the virtual reality. You can actually do simulated training with a firearm. You can do community engagement training. You can do mental health training. Have you had the CIT training, a CIT presentation?
Once.
Okay. One of the things that they do there is the headphones to simulate what it's like to be in a mental health crisis. So this virtual reality allows you to interact with somebody who is experiencing that and then actually see that interaction from the eyes of the person who's experiencing it. So not just hearing the voices, but seeing what they're seeing and the hallucinations that they're seeing and what the officer looks like. It was blown away when I saw the technology in person. So it's something that we're looking at.
Is this a camera?
Is what no, this is for tendonitis.
Oh. I thought maybe it was another pilot.
No, gosh, no. I'm just old.
Just so you can
Just old and broken.
So thank you. Wow, we went long. So
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It was really, really interesting.
Is your
It was just, you got a lot of questions because it was really interesting, and I really appreciate all the time. Thank you so much. I'm sorry we kept you long. But since I'm sure you're free to stay, but the rest of the stuff is boring. So
I'm gonna collect my cameras. Okay, because they're $800 a pop. I think I'd have some splaining to do. They cost $700 a piece. When we purchased them, Axon gave us a 2-for-1, buy one get one free, which was super handy. And that's okay. I can shut them off. Take that away from you guys so you can. Thank you.
Okay. So we're gonna power through. And we may punt on a couple of things because I really like to keep us not on time.
Yep.
So
The only thing is I probably have to
First thing we've got to do, first of all, just to tell everybody, we had hoped to have a discussion of the community outreach plan that Dave and Julie have been working on. But for a variety of reasons, a bunch of other things came up that we needed to look at. And so we're going to move that off until October. So we have more time to kind of work on it and have a more robust discussion.
So we can switch over from my computer so you have to
Sure. That gives me 2 minutes to go to the bathroom. Oh, wait, we can't take 2 minutes. Sorry. So, I will entertain a motion to take 2 minutes. Okay, a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so we got until 8:26. I will be right back.
Good.
Thank you.
Morning, lunch? Okay, perfect. I'll send you a couple of times if we can sync up, and then we'll sync up.
Oh, Friday I can do it.
Okay, perfect.
So. I think we are good.
Are you good? Okay, great. So we're gonna try and power through some of the stuff we need to get done. I'm actually gonna pass on the approval of the minutes until we get through some of the other stuff we really have to do. So the first critical thing we really have to do is talk about approving the electronic meeting policy. Mommy, do you want to take it away and talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I will keep it super brief. So everyone should have received a copy of the county electronic meetings policy. There's also a physical copy on the desk here in front of you. If anyone wants to see it, it's also publicly available on this ULP website. It is exact same language as every other commission is provided to us by the city attorney, so it's not been altered or changed in any way, other than to just add our name into it. The purpose of us passing this is going to be to allow for us to formally have hybrid meetings where some members can appear virtually, or we can have virtual meetings in limited circumstances, which I'll go over. But just in order for us to formally adopt it and for there to be a capacity for folks to appear virtually moving forward, because the emergency order was lifted, we do need to pass that tonight through motion and vote. And then moving forward, we will all have to adhere to, or the entire COB will have to adhere to the policy requirements, which if you recall, Kendra went through during one of our previous COB meetings, but I will also go through some of the highlights, which I could do now or after you all vote.
You might as well go through them now.
Okay, they're very, very quick. I think 4 bullet points that I just wanted to highlight. Again, it's there for you guys to read. It's just 3 pages. I encourage you to read it so you're familiar with all of the rules. But basically, the things that you want to be super mindful of is that each commission can only meet up to either 2 times or 25% virtually per calendar year. For us, that might be more than 2 meetings because we are meeting twice a month right now. So whichever is greater. The virtual meetings cannot be held consecutively. We just can't have them back to back. And each calendar year it resets. Also, each particular COB member may only appear virtually for up to either 2 meetings or 25% of the meetings per calendar year, whichever is greater. And it's for, you can use that clause for your own personal reasons. That reason must be disclosed to the COB chair and on the record. Not in like, great detail, but just to say, I'm attending a funeral or I'm attending this, whatever the reason is. And then you'll need to say, where you're appearing from virtually. So I'm calling in from Falls Church, Virginia, or wherever you are. In order to do that, you must get prior approval from the COB chair, and the COB chair will have to keep track of how many times each person has missed for personal reasons and either approve or deny it. Some exemptions to that 2 meeting or 25% rule are if you have a medical condition or a disability, or you're taking care of a family member with a medical condition or disability, whether it's a temporary or permanent one. In those situations, you will still need to let Lisa know so that we can be mindful of that for reasons of like, we need to have a physical quorum at each meeting. So for example, if we know that somebody is going to be out for a medical reason, we need to be mindful of that when making decisions about approving or denying other people's requests for personal reasons or what have you. And also keep in mind that this is the last point, so I'll just go to that because it's related. These rules and regulations must be applied strictly and uniformly. So keeping in mind that there are exemptions for medical conditions, we can't guarantee that it's always going to be allowed, that you're going to be able to use that exemption if we're already missing a number for a physical quorum. So being able to allow everyone an opportunity to appear virtually for whatever reason it may be will be something that Lisa will have to balance. So just keeping that in mind. And as I stated earlier, we need a physical quorum of 5 voting members at each meeting in order to do things such as, pass motions or anything of that nature. So any sort of COB business requires a physical quorum. Another important point to note is that if at any point we do not have a physical quorum, then no other commission member may appear virtually. So if, let's say it was only 4 physical voting members, nobody would be able to appear virtually until a 5th voting member came in the room. We had a physical quorum in the room, and then those folks can log on virtually. So if we happen to all be virtually, if some of those people ended up being virtual, and let's say 2 or 3 people had to leave the meeting early, all the people who are on virtual also, the COB members that are on virtual would also have to get off of the meeting because they would be in violation of the hybrid meeting policy if there's no physical quorum in the room. Any questions?
So the 2 or 25% of the opportunities to participate in an otherwise physical meeting, but you would participate virtually, that's in addition to the everybody meets virtually.
That's right.
Right, okay.
That's right. And again, just making sure that Lisa knows in advance. So we will be assuming, this is just a very important point, we are all assuming just as a method of accountability to ourselves and also to the people who are coming in to train us, that everybody is expected to be physically present unless we're all appearing virtually or unless you have gotten approval from Lisa prior to the meeting. We should know in advance of the meeting whether or not you are coming. Nobody is going to proactively reach out to you to know whether or not you're coming. It's every individual's member's responsibility to inform at least Lisa, but preferably Lisa and myself, so that we are all on the same page. And Gary as well. If you're able to hit all three of us, that's even better. But at least Lisa, because she's the one who's going to be accountable for making sure that that attendance is up to date.
Go ahead, no, please.
Timing, getting here exactly 6 o'clock. Do we have like a 5-minute window? Because I know sometimes for me, getting off of work and driving over here can get a little sticky. I try my best to get it as soon as possible, but is there start the meeting exactly 6 or?
So I think it's gonna depend a little bit. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of flexibility on the training schedule, but I think the training technically is not one of our meetings. So
these are not considered a meeting.
This is now.
This part is.
This is, but, so we're going to be having the trainings first and then our actual meetings later. So that should help for you if you're running late, because our actual meeting won't start until probably an hour in. So there shouldn't, and then as we move forward, I don't know, we'll have to figure out once we get past this sort of when we're going to start our meetings. And I'm a big believer in short meetings. So, moving forward, when it's just us, if we can do it 6:30 to 8, that way we're not here too late and we give people enough time to get here. Whatever works, we're going to try and find some way that's going to work best for everybody. So I understand that, it's difficult for you, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, we need a physical quorum in order to conduct COB business,
Right.
but we don't need a physical quorum to start the training. We are going to try to just get in the practice of starting as close to on time as possible, just to be respectful of other people's time. Of course, knowing that, if you need to account for transit time coming from work, that's totally understandable. And just, let us know if, you run into any issues with getting here and you are anticipating that you're going to be more than a few minutes late or something of that nature, or that you're not going to make it at all, so we could account for that in advance. Yeah, any other questions?
I thought I was going to have to call you because I was driving around Arlington trying to find the garage entrance. I'm like, I'm going to have to call them and tell them they're going to start the meeting without me because I'm wandering around Arlington. But anyway, please go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, owing to the challenge we have with the physical forum and knowing that we can only have 2 virtual meetings a year, like for example, this year, that would still be till the end of the year because it was an emergency, those weren't virtual meetings.
Right.
But if, for example, we had a slate of, we need to approve a bunch of things, and if we don't do it, then we're not gonna get to the next one. If 3 people have to appear virtually, it might make sense to do an all virtual meeting, which is why it's extra important that we coordinate as far in advance as possible, so we could make a determination of either this needs to be an all virtual meeting or we need to rearrange the schedule.
Yeah, very good point. That's a very good point. Absolutely.
Do you take account the state there's a weather issue? Would that count as the virtual, like for instance, there's a snowstorm and it happened, everybody was planning to attend in person, then I had to switch. Would that still count as our 2 virtuals a year? Do that incidental?
There's nothing in the policy that speaks to that, but I think in an instance like that, we could make the decision to cancel or reschedule the meeting if we're already at capacity with our 2 virtual or 25% virtual meetings.
Or
Because
sometimes in extreme weather, the county does declare an emergency because they have other meetings scheduled on the same days and nights, so.
The ordinance does we have a minimum number of meetings we're supposed to have in a given year, but we haven't been stood up officially, so we're not under that rule right now. Once we are, then we are supposed to have, I don't remember what it was, 12 or something in a given year, which, we can have 2 in 1 month and none in, the next month or something. We can figure out how that would work. But for now, we're not under that rule, so we don't have to worry about it. But anyway, so given that, I would entertain a motion to adopt the virtual meeting rules. Is that what they're actually called?
Electronic.
Electronic, yeah, sorry.
I'd like to
Electronic
make a
meeting.
motion to adopt our electronic meetings policy that was just briefed.
And second the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent, so we got something done. So, okay. Then the next really, really important thing we have to try and get done today is approval of hiring of the outside counsel. So just to mention, you know, I think everybody's here is aware that we were looking at hiring outside counsel. I believe the ordinance allows us. And it just seemed to make sense to us that there are so many different kinds of things we might end up coming across that would really be useful. Now, Arlington County does have counsel and they will support us in many areas, but you know, it just seemed reasonable for us to take advantage of the ordinance and hire outside counsel. So Dave and I and Mummy interviewed a couple of candidates, both of whom were excellent. But one really, really stood out. She just knocked her socks off. She's really great. And I don't know, Dave or Mummy, if you want to say a couple more words about her.
I mean,
at all, or your experience.
yeah, I mean.
So her name was Cynthia
Hudson.
Right. Yeah,
And,
she's great.
and as you say, both candidates were very good, but Ms. Hudson was particularly stood out because she has represented, I think still represents, the Charlottesville Oversight Board. So she has experience that's directly relevant to what we're doing.
Yeah.
And her first job, or one of her earlier jobs, was as the deputy city attorney in Hampton. And she worked for the police department, so she's familiar with, she's been on ride-alongs, she's familiar with police operations. And she was also most recently, she's currently like of counsel at a firm, and we're hiring the firm. But prior to her going to the firm, she was, I think, like deputy Commonwealth attorney, or AG for the Commonwealth, deputy AG for the Commonwealth. So she's had a lot of really good experience, a lot of government experience, and in particular, I mean, her representing the Charlottesville Oversight Board and helping them draft their bylaws was very, effective for us. So between the two candidates, and again, the other candidate was good, but just didn't have that particular experience. And Ms. Hudson's firm has an office in McLean. She's currently, she lives and works in Richmond, but she can come up here. She's got a satellite office. So
I just want to say one more thing about her, which is that she really wanted the job. I mean, she was really passionate about what we do, and she wants to be part of this.
Yeah.
And that really stuck out. She really wanted to work with us. She was being flexible on how we figure out our financial arrangements with them because we don't have a big budget. So I just wanted to put that down as well. She was very clear that this is an area that she's passionate about, that she wants to work on. And we just loved her. So we have to pass a motion in order to get that whole process moving. I can't do motions.
Right. So I will.
Before we go into that, sorry, just
Yeah.
a quick comment, just to discuss the process of hiring outside counsel, just for purposes of transparency and everyone knowing what's going on. So the outside counsel candidates for the ordinance were recommended to us by the city attorney. I then shared those two candidates with the entire community oversight board. You all selected the members who were going to interview the candidates, and we wanted them to be the same two members for purposes of consistency. Shared they were asked the same questions to keep it fair and equal opportunity. And then the decision of who to hire rested solely with Lisa and Dave. And I was just there as a facilitator to, make sure that they were able to meet and ask all the questions that they needed to ask, and answer any questions from the county side, what the process would be for hiring. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that this was not a county decision, that the COB had full autonomy to make their own decision. And that's just for purposes of making sure that it's an independent process, and that Ms. Hudson would be in a position where she is being hired exclusively by the COB. That being said, because I serve as professional support staff for the COB, I would be the point of contact should this motion be passed to, you all would be authorizing me by this motion to essentially execute the contract. And what that looks like is I would request a letter of engagement from Ms. Hudson, and then I would formally accept it on behalf of the COB. And then anytime you all have requested services from her, she sends you all an invoice. I would be the one who approves the invoice, and in the interim, I will be working with the county to get her set up as a contractor and whatnot in our system, which is called PRISM, to make sure that she gets paid and everything like that. So that's what I would be doing on my end, which is like the administrative piece. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that everybody knew how that will work.
And what will be the duration? Can you just give just the general?
Oh, so I'm glad you asked that question, because I meant to say as well that this doesn't commit us to anything long-term.
Mm-hmm.
We can decide after a little while that this arrangement isn't working and we'd like to look around for somebody else or something. So this doesn't actually commit us to anything, which I thank you for that question, because I think that's important to note as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion?
And then also I think one other thing I wanted to highlight is that I will be working with Cynthia as well as the city attorney and Lisa and Gary, or Lisa, Dave and Gary, since you participated in the interviews as well, to just make sure that we clearly outline what the roles and responsibilities are of outside counsel, because we do have some form of support from the county for legal services. One thing I did also want to mention is that the county does cover you all under their like general liability policy, if you all were to ever, very likely not to happen, but to get sued or anything like that, when you're acting in your capacity as COP members, you are covered. And I do have that policy in writing to share with you all if you ever just want to, glance at it. But this is like for circumstances outside of that. So just so that we know exactly like what the county is going to do and what outside counsel is going to do and what I would be able to help with, we'll be like outlining that and obviously getting input from you all and sharing that information back and forth to make sure that we're all clear.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Like, impossible.
so I'll entertain a motion if somebody wants to make one.
I will move that the Community Oversight Board engage the services of Sands Anderson PC, which is Ms. Hudson's law firm, as its outside counsel, and authorize the independent policing auditor to negotiate and execute a contract with Sands Anderson to do that.
Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Great, the motion is so carried, which is very exciting. So we can get that process moving. Okay, so far so good. Where are we? Okay. So I am committed to getting us out of here at 9 o'clock, I promise. So, but I thought it would be useful to give a little bit of a training update. And so we asked Gary, as Christian mentioned, we've been doing a lot of training. So just to sort of give us an overview of, how much we've accomplished, how much is ahead, just like a 5-minute overview.
Yeah, so be quick. I'm not gonna, Kristen really did a good thing. We're over the halfway mark. And Jim prepared a nice kind of overview that I'll just go over to everybody here, just to let you know as a whole where we're at. So we're on track to complete 100% by the end of October. Okay, but we've got to keep doing what we're doing. All of our remaining ACBD sessions are in person. I'll go over those in a second. And as we approach, we are getting into September, there's a few highlights of where we're at right now. But really, just all of us, I know it's been difficult during COVID, but we're kind of on the tail ends of that. There's still stuff going on. That's why we're still wearing masks. But let's just stick with it. I mean, it's been hard for everybody. At every job, everything out there. So let's just kind of put our nose to the grind and we'll get this and be ready to do what they've asked us to do. So here's a quick update. Ride-alongs, we've got 6 out of 9 have completed all of the 12 hours of ride-along. So thanks for that, and everybody that's still remaining to try to get a best effort there. I've got a couple more months left. And Captain Chamberlain has been extremely flexible with things. If you need to change the time or whatever, so particularly the late night when she was really flexible. So I know you've got situations, but just find something that works. Tell her any special requests, and she'll make it happen. Okay, so that's the message for all of us. Upcoming training dates. The next one's going to be September 20th, and the biggest thing on the training, just as Lisa went over the thing on the policy, on the virtual meetings, the number one thing is if you're not going to make something, let us know, and I'm really going to send a message out to all of us. And I'm not speaking to anybody, an individual. It's really all of us pulling together, and we have to do our best to try to make these, I mean, it's on the calendar. And if you know you can't make it, all of us are professional, right? So if you know you can't make it, let Lisa know early, okay? Just like you would at work, okay? So same thing. And that's giving respect to Captain Chamberlain, these outstanding briefers. You know, if we're not going to be here, then we need to make some adjustments. But I really want to put a pitch for the entire COP to support each other, try to make these last sessions and make them very productive. So September 20th at Section 6 in person, and we have 3 hours planned. So I'm assuming we will not do business on the 20th. Okay? And I'm assuming same place, same location, unless otherwise, Mummy?
Yes, the first 2 hours will be here, and then the last hour is a tour of the ACP headquarters. So we'll be going over there in closed session for that portion, and then we'll have to come back on the record to end the meeting.
Okay. All right, moving into October, so that's the last one in September is the 20th. October 4th, we've got session. That's for an hour and a half. Okay, and I think October 4th.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be session 7. That's not important to you, but that'll be an in-person for an hour and a half. And I don't know if, Mummy, we're going to split that up and do some business that day also.
We are.
Yeah. It'll be an hour and a half of ACPD training, and then however long, whether it's an hour and a half of COB business afterwards. Still planned for the 3 hours.
Yep.
But just you're highlighting what portion of it is going to be training, right?
Okay. Okay, and then of course the biggie is October 15th. That's a Saturday. Okay, that's our in-person at the Nova Criminal Justice Academy. That's an all-day session. They've got 9 hours blocked there. So we don't have the full agenda for that yet. Mommy's working on that. We'll get that out as soon as we can. But that's a biggie for us just to make a commitment. And if you can't, and we really have to do our best effort. And I'll reach out to the people who are not here and just there's situations, but if you can't make that, please let us know.
Because there's no virtual participation.
Yeah, there's no
It
virtual.
has to be in person.
That's all in person.
I was gonna say, I'll follow up with you, but I really loved those spreadsheet Jim sent out showing everyone, but also all the training requirements, because I know for the online modules, those are just inherently less visible. So I think we might send before the end of September an individual email to each COB member to say what they have left, just so that everyone has a month of, oh shoot, I've got one more ride along, 2 modules, whatever, and that everyone can confirm to that email that they can attend that in person or not.
That's a great suggestion.
That's a very good idea.
Yeah, I
Just
like
to make
that.
sure we actually, not as a regular practice, people should be reaching out to let us know if they can't attend, but for that one, we'll want to make sure we know in advance who can't be
Okay.
there.
Because
got that.
honestly, we don't know people don't show up to that. I don't know how that's going to get taken care of because there is no virtual participation. That's going to be a real problem. We have
Everyone
been,
has to appear in order for that training to happen.
yeah,
Because it's a day where they have literally blocked off the entire building. A lot of time and money and resources are going into that. And so my suggestion would be that at the October 4th meeting at the very latest, if not possibly earlier, because if we do need to reschedule it, that's probably going to be a huge lift for Captain Chamberlain and her team. So that should be absolute worst case scenario, but we would want to let them know as early as possible. So I think it would be good to get verbal and written confirmation from each member just to make sure everybody has that time blocked off on their schedule. as far in advance as possible. That's difficult to do if everybody's not physically here for like this meeting or the next meeting. But for those who are not here in person, like if anybody has a scheduling conflict now, they should like let us know so we can get that ball rolling as soon as possible. But I can't iterate enough how much effort is going into like planning that. And actually it's not me planning, it's Captain Chamberlain and her team. So I cannot take credit for that, but they planned a whole day of activities, lunch, the whole shebang. So we do not want to step there.
Yeah. And we have been mentioning this date for a while.
Yeah.
Nobody should be surprised
Yeah,
because
so
we've been mentioning this for a
Of
while.
all of our training, I'm assuming that
It's still
October,
not on anyone's
October
calendar.
15th.
9 to 6,
In-
but I'll double check that.
They're not a calendar.
Oh, our Arlington County
Yeah.
calendar?
That's why. I
Oh,
was just
mommy,
gonna say-
can you put it on everybody's Arlington County calendar?
What
do
we training?
Yeah, the one on the.
So all of the meetings, they go on to everyone's Arlington County calendar via the Teams link. And then they also go onto your individual calendars. They also go onto the Arlington County public calendar. And that's how people in the public will know, just from looking at the calendar, what
But
meetings are going
Julie,
on.
are you saying you don't see it?
No,
It's not when
I'm
you-
saying that specific day isn't a meeting and it's not on our calendar, I don't think.
It's not on the.
Oh, it might not have been,
Right.
put
That's
on
what
the
I
calendar
was,
yet.
I was saying, if
Yeah.
you reach out to let everyone know, it's certainly not the first time they've heard this
Yeah.
date. But as we come to triple check to make sure we don't get there and then waste everyone's time, we'll want to make sure that it's on the,
their calendar as well.
Yeah, so mommy, can you confirm, so I don't believe that's gonna be recorded.
That is closed
No.
session.
So this is part of this message will send in September. If you miss this, the stress we're putting on the county is immense. And it really impacts our cert date. So we have to get everybody at that session. And of course, for time here, I'm moving forward. The last one is on October 18th, 3 days later. And that's 3 hours in person,
October 18th.
October 18th.
That should be another Tuesday, right? We're always.
That should be
on Tuesdays.
Tuesday.
All of the meetings that we have like in this room are already on we're already blocked off on the calendar, but you might not have the Teams link yet because I usually send those are separate from the meeting calendar. But you'll get them in advance of the actual meeting. So they will be on your personal county email calendars.
Okay, great.
Now, these meetings are just training meetings, right? So that means that you can miss the first half or you miss.
I mean,
and it's not counted against you.
technically, a training, one of these kinds of trainings is not a meeting and we don't need a quorum. But obviously, it's better to be here than not be here, but that part is.
Sorry, that's actually not accurate because of the electronic meetings policy that
Oh,
we have.
it's changed now?
So whether or not we have a physical quorum impacts whether or not we can pass COB business.
Right. But
You
you just
have
talked
to
about
still
the,
physically be here in order to be like accounted for the training, right? Is that what you're asking?
yeah,
Yeah.
questions about the training.
Yeah, so I think then you get into like nuances about like how late can you be and still be counted as present. I think that's something that like we could ask and figure out, like as far as the training goes, if you miss the training, let's say, I'm not saying you're gonna be an hour and a half late, but let's just say you missed the whole training. I don't know how that gets counted. There will be ways for us to make up those trainings, like vis-a-vis Learning Center, if it's not a closed session training. But missing the training, I don't know to what extent that gets counted against like you physically being absent, right? So that might be something that we want to just check and ask as well.
Yeah.
So we're just clear about the expectations.
Okay,
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so 2 minutes left. Do we want to try and power through those meeting minutes? Because I kind of skipped through that. So I will, and so the minutes have been distributed and reviewed by the Community Oversight Board. Are there any corrections? And we're talking about the August 2nd and August 16th meeting minutes.
I didn't have any comments.
Nothing? Okay, so hearing no corrections, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from the August 2nd and 16th COB meetings. If somebody wants to make the motion.
I'll move that we adopt the meeting minutes from August 2nd, August 16th.
Great. Anybody want a second?
I second them.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. So we got done all the stuff that was actually critically important. And the other stuff, we're just gonna let go. So we're done on time. Thanks to everybody. You know, I know how hard this is to make it through after a long day. So thank you so much. And we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Oh, right, adjourning, hold it. There's a whole adjourning thing.
I'll write it down.
Did it? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so do I not then have to do the whole adjourning thing?
We can do it till we say we did it.
Okay, we can say, okay. So is there any additional business? Please say no.
No.
Oh, no, okay. So hearing no additional business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Would anybody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Anybody want a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, okay. We're like a minute late, but we did pretty good, so.
Yep. Excellent job.
So that was all very interesting, I must say.
Bobby, did you bring the name tags?
Yes. I will collect them and
Okay.
bring them for each job.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Y'all, please take some of these snacks with you. There are Ziploc bags. Take some goodies home to someone else, so I don't have to take back stuff on. Please and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Poor money still has to drive all the way to Maryland. How long does it take you to get home, Mommy?
At this hour, probably like 30 minutes.
Oh,
Not too bad,
probably
yeah.
less than it's gonna take me.
During the day, it might take me an hour.
Yeah.
All right, goodbye.
All right.
Take care.
Yep.
I'm in love with your shoes.
Oh, thank you.
Record this. I can't wear sunglasses, but.
Bye, everybody. I actually.
Goodbye. Take care.
Oh, I just can't wear my heels.
Oh, you're like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love them, but I work with them
Next
on
couple of-
Yeah.
for men, but
You're-
very sensitive.
Honestly, I'm thinking everything.
That's fair. And also, you have to hide it. I'm like, if I don't have my heels, I feel like people can't see seriously.
Oh, I love them.
This was a really important. It was really-
I feel you.
Like, ma'am. Ma'am.
Yeah.
I reveal
That's the
so
guts
much.
of it.
That's the guts.
Yeah.
Okay, good seeing you. Take
My
care.
sister's my height and she always wears high heels and she's like, I think they're more comfortable than sneakers. And I was like, not that anyone's gone that far. If you have a pair of heels that are more comfortable, I'll buy that. I'm not taking.
Yeah.
Take literally a whole box. I appreciate it very much. You're doing me a favor.
Bye, Julie.
Fine,
So just
yeah,
send-
I'll send you an invite.
And you can change my shoes. Because they're not
As comfortable as sneakers?
Well, I'm just changing it to